A 6-year-old human child sits alone in a cold Kardashian isolation cell, sentenced to die in 3 days. The stark metal walls of the maximum security detention center press in around Timothy Walker, who traces patterns in the condensation forming on the reinforced viewport. Outside, the towering spires of the Kardashian capital pierce the amber sky, their shadows stretching across the government district as twin suns set on another day of his imprisonment. In the diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Marcus Warren's face pales as he reads the official declaration from the Kardashian High Command. The document, bearing the seal of their supreme judiciary, details the child's crime of illegal entry into Kardashian space, a capital offense under their unyielding legal system. The fact that Timothy arrived in an escape pod after his parents' research vessel was destroyed means nothing to them. Their law demands blood, even that of a child. Joseph Powell stands at parade rest behind the ambassador's chair, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he processes the information. At 4 to 5, the former Marine Corps Special Operations Commander has seen his share of combat, but nothing has hit him this hard since losing his own son to illness 5 years ago. His fingers flex imperceptibly against his tactical uniform, mind already calculating angles of approach, security patterns, and potential extraction routes. A shadow moves in his peripheral vision. Diana, a Kardashian judicial clerk, slides a data chip across the embassy's security desk. Her scaled features remain carefully neutral, but her eyes hold a spark of rebellion against her society's harsh treatment of children. The chip contains classified specifications of the detention center, a fortress that has never been breached in its 2-century history. In the central command chamber of the government district, Gul Dukat addresses the assembled diplomatic corps. His scales glisten under the harsh lighting as he announces the impending execution, presenting it as a necessary demonstration of Kardashian law in the face of expanding human influence. The message is clear: no exceptions, no mercy, not even for a child. Powell reviews the facility schematics in his secured office. Elite Kardashian military units patrol every level, operating with clockwork precision. Breaking in would be impossible through conventional means. Breaking out, even more so. The wrong move could spark an interstellar war between Earth and the Kardashian Empire. But as Powell studies the guard rotations and security protocols, he remembers his son's face. He remembers the promise he made at that small grave to never again stand idle while a child's life hangs in the balance. The Kardashians believe their facility is impregnable, their law absolute. They haven't met a determined human father with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Time ticks away in Timothy's cell. 3 days until execution. 3 days for Earth's strongest soldier to attempt the impossible, to challenge an empire's authority, to save one small life that has become the focal point of 2 civilizations on the brink of war. Powell's office transformed into a command center as satellite imagery from Earth's Special Operations Command materialized on his secure displays. His fingers traced the intricate network of corridors and security checkpoints leading to Cell Block D, where Timothy waited in the cold depths of the detention facility. 3 levels underground, Diana said, her scaled fingers dancing across the judicial database interface. They're keeping him with the political prisoners. Powell nodded, studying the rotating patrol patterns on the security feeds. 6-person teams moved with military precision, their weapons at ready positions. Each forward shift change presented a brief window of vulnerability, a window measured in seconds rather than minutes. In the diplomatic wing, Ambassador Warren's voice carried through the reinforced walls as he engaged in a heated exchange with Kardashian officials. The Treaty of Septimus explicitly addresses the treatment of minors in cases of territorial incursion. Article 7, subsection 3. The bureaucratic theater served its purpose. Through the embassy's surveillance network, Powell watched Gul Duquette's personal shuttle depart for the judiciary complex, flanked by diplomatic escorts, one less pair of eyes on the detention center. Dr. Morrison, Powell activated his secure comm channel. Status report. Medical supplies secured, Morrison's voice came through, tight with tension. Trauma kit, stabilizers, and enough analgesics to keep a Kardashian riding herd sedated for a week, all packed for rapid deployment. Powell's attention shifted to the maintenance tunnels revealed in Diana's architectural files. The abandoned processing plant looked innocuous enough, just another derelict structure in the industrial sector. But beneath its crumbling facade lay an entrance to the facility's original utility network, forgotten by all but the most meticulous record keepers. Marcus Hayes appeared on the security feed, his maintenance uniform dusty from work in the environmental systems. Powell tracked his movements through the checkpoints, noting how the guard's attention slipped during shift changes. Hayes's credentials cleared him through 3 separate scanning points without a second glance. "The medical examinations are buying us time," Diana reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Kellis Wren has ordered a full cellular degradation analysis. Standard procedure for ensuring a humane execution, but the tests typically take," she froze, scales paling as she read an incoming transmission. "They're moving up the timeline. 24 hours lost." Powell activated his emergency protocols. The shield frequency disruptors and biosignature maskers needed to be in position before sunrise. He pulled up Hayes's work schedule, overlaying it with the guard rotation patterns. A plan crystallized, one that would use the Kardashians' own precision against them. "Dr. Morrison, prepare your gear for transport to Site Beta. Diana, I need those maintenance tunnel schematics scrubbed of any access logs." Hayes's credentials need to show authorized access to the environmental systems in sections adjacent to Cell Block D. He studied the medical examination room's location relative to the abandoned access tunnels. The distance was significant, but navigable with proper timing and the right distractions. His hand moved to the secure compartment where he'd stored the modified shield disruptors, each one calibrated to cycle through the facility's rotating frequencies. A message flashed across his screen: new orders from Earth's Special Operations Command. Additional satellite coverage authorized, along with a data packet containing the latest Kardashian security protocol decryption algorithms. His former unit understood what was at stake. In the detention facility's medical ward, Timothy Walker underwent another series of scans under Dr. Wren's supervision. Each test added precious minutes to the clock, but time slipped away like water through clenched fingers. 24 hours had evaporated from an already tight window. Powell initialized the biosignature maskers, checking their calibration against the Kardashian detection grid. The technology would hide human life signs for short periods, but using them too early would trigger the facility's automated security responses. Everything hinged on precision, timing, and the predictable patterns of an overconfident system. Through the embassy's windows, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the government district. In the gathering darkness, Powell's equipment cache grew. Specialized tools, emergency medical supplies, and the technologies needed to breach a fortress that had never been breached before. A sharp knock at Powell's office door interrupted his analysis of the facility schematics. Commander Richard Drake entered without waiting for a response, his Earth Fleet intelligence uniform pristine despite the late hour. Powell recognized the calculated timing of the visit after normal embassy hours when few witnesses remained. "Quite the operation you're planning," Drake said, engaging the room's security protocols. The windows polarized, and a subtle hum indicated active counter-surveillance measures. "Though I expected nothing less from a Marine Special Operations commander." Powell kept his expression neutral, but his muscles tensed. Drake pulled up a chair and placed a data pad on the desk between them. 3 Kardashian warships moved into position 6 hours ago, Drake said, displaying tactical overlays of orbital positions. They've created a blockade pattern that would trap any escape vessel attempting to reach Earth space. A routine security exercise, I'm sure, Powell replied, studying the vessel configurations. About as routine as your requisition of shield frequency disruptors through diplomatic channels. Drake's voice held no accusation, only professional assessment. Earth Fleet Intelligence has been monitoring the situation since Timothy's arrest. We're here to assist, not interfere. The tactical display shifted, revealing detailed readings of Kardashian orbital defense grid modifications. Powell noted the reinforced sections, calculating new vectors that would avoid the strengthened areas. Diana's voice came through Powell's secured comm channel. Dr. Wren has scheduled another examination series for Timothy, Medical Wing, tomorrow at 900. Maintenance access confirmed for environmental systems checked during the same window, Marcus Hayes added, his voice rough from hours in the dusty service tunnels. Powell glanced at Drake, who nodded slightly. Our analysts picked up the same scheduling patterns. The medical wing presents your best opportunity. Fewer guards, lighter security protocols. Thomas Warren appeared in the doorway, his eyes bright with focused intensity. The ambassador's son carried himself with the precise movements of someone who spent more time with computers than people. I've isolated the shield generator subsystems, Thomas reported, bringing up complex diagnostic displays. A cascading power fluctuation would force a switch to auxiliary systems for approximately 48 seconds. During that window, all security protocols revert to default settings. Dr. Morrison entered next, carrying a compact medical kit. The stabilization compound is ready. It'll keep Timothy calm without compromising motor function. I've also prepared treatments for potential atmospheric exposure. Powell expanded the facility schematics, highlighting the maintenance tunnel network that Diana had uncovered. The original evacuation route for Kardashian officials provided a clear path to their exit point, assuming they could reach it undetected. Ambassador Warren has meetings scheduled with the Central Command throughout tomorrow morning, Drake added. He's filed enough appeals and cultural exemption requests to keep their bureaucracy tied in knots for days. Diana's next transmission carried an edge of urgency. Timothy's refusing meals. Dr. Wren's latest psychological evaluation indicates severe withdrawal symptoms. We need to move soon. Powell activated the secured diplomatic courier protocols, transferring equipment authorizations to specific drop points near the facility. Each location was marked with passive sensors that would alert them to Kardashian patrol movements. The night shift operates at reduced strength, Diana continued. Budget restrictions have cut their staffing by 20%. Thomas's fingers flew across his console, programming the power fluctuation sequence. The system is prepped. One command will trigger the cascade. Dr. Morrison organized his medical supplies with practiced efficiency. The compound needs to be administered within 30 minutes of the extraction. After that, its effectiveness decreases rapidly. Powell studied the orbital defense grid patterns one final time, memorizing the gaps between patrol routes and sensor sweeps. The facility's walls would soon prove less impregnable than their designers had intended. In the medical wing, Dr. Wren's instruments recorded Timothy's vital signs, each reading adding to the growing file of pre-execution data. The child's small form curled tighter on the examination table, eyes fixed on the stark ceiling above. Through the observation window, Powell watched Timothy's small form on the examination table. The boy's vacant stare pierced the stark ceiling panels while Dr. Wren's instruments whirred and clicked. Dawn's first rays filtered through the facility's reinforced windows, casting long shadows across the medical wing's sterile surfaces. Powell's comm unit vibrated. "Security modifications in progress," Marcus Hayes whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of environmental systems. "Accessing primary junction box now." In the facility's central control hub, Thomas Warren's fingers danced across his terminal, introducing subtle variations into the power grid. The fluctuations appeared as minor anomalies, the kind of degradation expected in aging Kardashian infrastructure. Warning indicators flickered briefly before settling into normal ranges. 3 civilian transports holding position at coordinates Lambdasvin, Commander Drake reported through the encrypted diplomatic channel. Crews standing by. Diana's scaled fingers moved across her console with practiced precision. Dr. Wren's extended examination schedule uploaded to Central Medical. 2 were window confirmed. A new set of footsteps echoed through the corridor, the sharp, measured stride of Kardashian military boots. Gul Morak swept into the security center, his armor gleaming under the harsh lighting. "Implement random sweep patterns for all patrol units," he ordered. "No predictable intervals." Powell watched through the surveillance feed as guards adjusted their routes, creating an irregular web of coverage across the facility. He activated his tactical display, overlaying the new patrol patterns with the maintenance tunnel schematics Thomas had provided. Security reinforcements diverted to spaceport. Ambassador Warren's voice came through, tight with controlled tension. "Cultural delegation arriving now. High command session begins in 40 minutes. In the medical supply closet, Dr. Morrison carefully arranged his equipment. The child-sized environment suit lay concealed beneath standard medical supplies, its systems primed and ready. The stabilizing compound, divided into precisely measured doses, waited in sealed hyposprays. "Primary route compromised," Diana reported, tracking the new guard positions. "Coolant tunnel access remains viable." Powell studied the maintenance access panel adjacent to Timothy's examination room. The separate power grid serving the medical equipment would reset when Thomas triggered the cascade. 4 to 5 seconds to breach the wall, administer Morrison's compound, and secure Timothy before backup systems engaged. "Temporal update," Commander Drake cut in. "Execution schedule advanced. 12 hours remaining." Powell moved through the maintenance tunnels, his boots splashing softly in the coolant runoff. The liquid's acrid scent filled his respirator as he navigated the narrow passages. Each step brought him closer to the medical wing's outer wall. "Power fluctuation sequence loaded," Thomas reported. "Awaiting execution command." "Medical wing, Section 3 clear," Hayes confirmed. "Environmental systems showing scheduled maintenance in progress." Through the tunnel wall, Powell heard the muted sounds of medical equipment and Dr. Wren's voice conducting his examination. The access panel's outline gleamed faintly under his low-light vision gear. "High command session commencing," Ambassador Warren transmitted. "Senior facility staff responding to summons. Initiating power cascade in 3, 2, 1. Thomas's fingers pressed the execution command. The tunnel lights flickered as the system reset rippled through the facility. Powell positioned his breaching tools against the access panel, ready to move the instant the security protocols defaulted. Behind the wall, Timothy waited. The next 4 to 5 seconds would determine if a child lived or died, if peace held or war erupted, if the impossible could be achieved through precisely planned action rather than mere hope. The lights died. Backup systems hummed to life, and the countdown began. The backup systems engaged with a low hum. Powell pressed forward through the maintenance tunnel, caustic coolant splashing against his protective gear. The liquid reached his chest in several sections, its acrid vapors testing the limits of his respirator's filtration system. His equipment pack, sealed against the corrosive environment, contained the tools that would determine the next 4 to 5 seconds. At his terminal, Thomas Warren's fingers moved in precise patterns across the control interface. Small anomalies appeared throughout the facility's systems, a malfunctioning temperature regulator in Block C, fluctuating lights in the eastern corridor, an atmospheric recycling glitch in the lower levels. Each issue drew maintenance crews away from the medical wing, creating a web of distractions that appeared routine to casual observation. Maintenance Supervisor Kelmer is reviewing system logs, Diana transmitted through the encrypted channel. He's noticed the pattern. Thomas responded instantly, triggering a prepared subroutine. An auxiliary power coupling 2 sectors away overloaded with a shower of sparks, flooding emergency channels with legitimate alerts. Through the security feeds, Powell watched Kelmer redirect his attention to the new crisis. Dr. Wren has initiated final blood chemistry analysis, Dr. Morrison reported. Timothy's cortisol levels are spiking. The stabilizing compound needs to be administered within the next 20 minutes. Powell reached the access panel, his sensor suite confirming the position relative to the medical wing. The caustic liquid lapped at his chest as he anchored himself against the tunnel wall. He extracted the breaching tools from his pack, each disguised as standard Kardashian maintenance equipment. "Alert!" Commander Drake's voice cut through the channel. 3 Kardashian warships on approach vector. Current ETA 37 minutes. Ambassador Warren's voice followed. Gul Marek has concluded testimony. He's returning to the facility. Powell activated the breaching sequence. The panel's edges glowed as the specialized tools pierced the barrier. Above him, Thomas's power fluctuations masked the energy signatures. Security sweep initiated in Sector 4, Diana reported. 6 guards moving systematically through maintenance areas. The panel gave way, revealing a utility closet barely large enough to stand in. Powell pulled himself from the coolant, his protective gear dripping corrosive liquid onto the metal floor. He stripped off the outer layer, revealing the Kardashian maintenance uniform beneath. "Timothy's vital signs are destabilizing," Dr. Morrison transmitted. "Heart rate elevated, respiratory pattern irregular." Through the closet's ventilation slats, Powell observed the medical wing. Dr. Wren moved methodically between diagnostic stations, his back to the door as he reviewed test results. Timothy lay motionless on the examination table, small fingers gripping the edges with white-knuckled intensity. "Gul Marek has ordered a full security review," Diana's voice carried urgency. Teams mobilizing for systematic sweep of all sectors. Powell extracted the shield frequency disruptor, its housing modified to match standard Kardashian engineering tools. The first security checkpoint stood 20 meters ahead, its sensors sweeping for unauthorized life signs. "Power systems stabilizing faster than projected," Thomas reported. Estimated 15 minutes before full restoration. Commander Drake's civilian transports adjusted their positions, maintaining their cover as trading vessels while establishing optimal extraction vectors. The approaching Kardashian warships complicated their escape routes, forcing contingency adjustments. "Security team entering Sector 3, Diana warned. 4 minutes until they reach your position." Powell stepped into the corridor, his movements matching the practiced efficiency of Kardashian maintenance staff. The shield frequency disruptor interfaced with the first checkpoint systems, creating a momentary gap in coverage. He passed through, the sensors registering only authorized maintenance signatures. "Doctor." Wren's voice carried through the medical wing's open door. "Preparing neural activity scan. Final baseline readings required before procedure." Timothy's breathing grew more erratic. The boy's eyes darted between shadows, tracking threats visible only to his increasingly unstable mind. Powell approached the second checkpoint, aware that each passing second brought Gul Marek closer to the facility. A security officer rounded the corner ahead, datapad in hand. Powell kept his pace steady, projecting the focused demeanor of technical staff responding to system failures. The officer passed without a second glance, his attention fixed on the growing list of maintenance alerts. Security sweep has reached Sector 3, Diana transmitted. 12 guards moving methodically through each room. The second checkpoint's sensors hummed as Powell approached. Behind him, boots echoed on metal flooring the security sweep, advancing through adjacent corridors. He raised the modified engineering tool, preparing to breach the final barrier between himself and Timothy. The medical wing's doors stood open, harsh light spilling into the corridor. Beyond them waited a child's fate, balanced on the edge of precisely planned action and rapidly mounting complications. A shrill maintenance alert pierced the corridor. The two guards at the medical wing's entrance checked their datapads, then moved quickly toward the reported system failure in the adjacent sector. Powell watched their departures through the modified engineering scanner, counting seconds. Inside the examination room, Dr. Wren activated 3 diagnostic units simultaneously. The machine's overlapping hums filled the space, masking other sounds. Powell pressed the shield frequency disruptor against the final security checkpoint. The device interfaced with the door's electronic lock, creating a clean breach without triggering alerts. The examination room's harsh lighting revealed Timothy's small form. The boy's ribs showed through his thin medical gown, weeks of detention evident in his pallid complexion. His eyes tracked Powell's approach, wide but controlled. Dr. Wren moved to his console, initiating deletion protocols for examination records. His fingers flew across the interface, systematically erasing evidence of the past hours. Powell withdrew the pressure injector containing Morrison's compound. "This will help you stay calm," he explained quietly, pressing it against Timothy's neck. The boy flinched slightly at the contact, but remained still as the medication entered his system. "Security override detected in power management systems," Thomas transmitted. "Gul Marak has ordered immediate medical wing lockdown." Metal scraping echoed through the corridors as security doors began closing in sequence. Powell helped Timothy into the child-sized environment suit, checking seals and life support systems. "Maintenance access compromised," Diana reported. "Security teams entering tunnel network. Alternate route identified through waste reclamation. Sending schematics now." Powell's tactical display updated, showing a maze of automated conveyor systems and processing chambers. The route bypassed security checkpoints but presented its own lethal challenges. "Kardashian warships adjusting patrol vectors," Commander Drake transmitted, "initiating trade route coverage patterns." Ambassador Warren's voice carried through the channel, presenting additional legal precedents for review. High Command fully engaged in diplomatic proceedings. Powell located the waste system access panel in the medical storage area. He lifted Timothy, noting how little the boy weighed, and entered the maintenance codes Diana provided. The panel slid open, revealing a dark shaft filled with caustic vapors. "Timing data uploaded for processing cycles," Diana transmitted. "Mark 3-second intervals between crusher activations." They descended into the waste system. Powell's enhanced vision tracked the massive hydraulic compactors as they slammed together, processing medical debris. He counted beats between cycles, moving them through gaps in the machinery. Chemical agents ate at their environment suits. Warning indicators showed degrading integrity in outer layers. Timothy clung to Powell's back as they navigated around automated sorting arms and through narrow maintenance bypasses. "Contamination alert initiated in medical wing," Dr. Wren reported. "Security forces responding to potential exposure event. Multiple system failures registering across all sectors," Hayes confirmed. "Maintenance crews diverted." Boots thundered on catwalks above as security teams entered the waste reclamation area. Powell pressed against a processing tank, caustic liquid dripping inches from their suits. The search pattern moved steadily closer. "Human biosigns detected in waste processing," Diana warned. "Security converging on your position." A mechanical crusher activated beside them, its massive plates meeting with bone-crushing force. Powell timed their movement between cycles, each step calculated against the machine's rhythm. Timothy's breathing remained steady, the stabilizing compound keeping panic at bay. Through the facility's gut they moved, staying ahead of pursuing forces. Their environment suit's integrity dropped steadily, damaged by the corrosive atmosphere. Above them, Gul Morek's security teams fought through the hazardous conditions, slowed but determined. Powell checked his tactical display as they reached a junction of conveyor systems. 3 possible routes, each with its own dangers. Behind them, voices echoed through the waste processing chamber. The mission's success would depend on choosing the correct path through this mechanical maze. Powell assessed the junction's 3 paths through his tactical display. The left route led through a series of chemical spray chambers, while the right passed between massive grinding units. The center path wound through a maze of compression machinery. His suit's integrity monitor flashed a warning corrosion had eaten through 47% of the outer protective layer. Timothy's smaller suit showed even worse degradation at 63%. "Status update," Commander Drake transmitted. 2 Kardashian cruisers breaking formation, establishing search pattern near your position. Powell chose the center path, timing their movements between the hydraulic compressors. Each machine cycle created a 3-second window for passage. He counted the rhythm: compress, release, move. Timothy's suit sensors transmitted data to Dr. Morrison. "His core temperature is rising," Morrison reported. "The chemical exposure is affecting his respiratory system. You need to get him out within 20 minutes. The boy's breathing grew labored. Powell stopped behind a processing tank, examining Timothy's suit seals. Caustic vapor leaked through degraded sections near the filtration intake. Powell detached his suit's secondary filtration unit and connected it to Timothy's system. The boy's breathing eased, but Powell's own air quality dropped. "Security teams accessing maintenance shafts on your level," Diana warned. "They'll intercept your planned exit route in approximately 6 minutes. Powell checked his tactical display. The maintenance shaft positions would cut off their path to the extraction point. He located an alternate route through the industrial processing section. "Waste reclamation shutdown orders incoming," Diana transmitted. "Delaying through diagnostic requests, but emergency purge protocols will activate soon." They moved deeper into the facility's industrial heart. Massive chemical treatment tanks loomed overhead, their contents heated to near boiling. Steam filled the spaces between machines, reducing visibility to arm's length. Timothy's grip tightened as boots echoed on metal walkways above. Powell pressed them against a tank's base as lights swept the area. The search team's voices carried through the steam. "Confirmed human biosigns in this sector," a Kardashian officer reported. "Spread out and check every maintenance access point." Thomas's voice cut through the encrypted channel. "Facility systems restored in sectors 1 through 4. Security override program detected." Powell guided Timothy between 2 chemical processors. Their suit's integrity warnings shifted to critical status. Less than 15 minutes of protection remained. The industrial section's higher concentration of corrosive agents accelerated the degradation. "Multiple system failures in external sensor grid," Hayes reported. "Security forces dividing between internal and perimeter response." A massive grinder activated beside them, its metal teeth pulverizing industrial waste. The noise covered their movement past 2 more security teams. Powell's tactical display showed 5 additional teams converging on their position. "Ambassador Warren's legal precedents have forced high command review," Diana transmitted. Command chain disrupted between central authority and facility security. Timothy stumbled, his smaller legs struggling to maintain the pace. Powell lifted him, noting how the boy's suit had stiffened as the outer layers deteriorated. The caustic atmosphere pressed against weakening seals. They reached a junction of heated chemical pipes. Steam burst from maintenance vents, creating momentary visual cover. Powell's enhanced vision identified gaps in the security team positions. Kardashian cruisers adjusting search pattern, Commander Drake reported. Earth Special Forces teams prepped for emergency deployment. Powell moved them through the steam cloud. His suit's filtration system struggled to process the concentrated chemicals. Timothy's borrowed filter showed signs of saturation. A security scanner swept past their position. Powell tucked them behind a waste processing unit, its massive paddles churning caustic liquid meters away. His tactical display showed 10 minutes of suit integrity remaining. The extraction point stood 8 sections ahead, through increasingly hazardous territory. Emergency purge sequence loading, Diana warned. 3 minutes until activation. All waste processing sections will be flooded with concentrated decontamination agents. The industrial processor's rhythm surrounded them: crash, grind, spray, repeat. Powell timed their next movement against the machine cycles, leading Timothy deeper into the facility's dangerous core. Above them, Kardashian search teams moved with increasing coordination as facility systems returned to normal operation. Their protective gear allowed them to ignore the hazardous environment that degraded Powell and Timothy's suits with each passing second. Powell scanned the corridor ahead, his enhanced vision piercing the chemical haze. An access panel stood out against the industrial machinery, an emergency maintenance shaft bypassing the main waste processing chamber. He guided Timothy toward it, monitoring the boys' increasingly labored breathing through their shared filtration system. A warning klaxon blared. Massive hydraulic systems engaged overhead as the facility initiated a compression cycle. Caustic spray erupted from ceiling vents. Powell pulled Timothy against his chest, curling his body around the boy as chemical agents rained down. His suit's integrity dropped another 12% from the exposure. Security teams deploying sonic pulse emitters, Diana transmitted. Thermal imaging active in all sectors. The tactical display revealed Gul Morak's forces surrounding their position. Teams moved with practiced efficiency, establishing overlapping fields of fire with their sonic weapons. The maintenance shaft offered their only path forward. Additional Kardashian warships detected, Commander Drake reported, preparing orbital insertion teams for emergency deployment. Powell accessed the shaft's control panel. The narrow passage stretched into darkness, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. He lifted Timothy, positioning the boy ahead of him. System access compromised, Thomas transmitted, initiating final diversion in Sector 7. Warning indicators flashed across Powell's display. His suit's integrity fell below 20% as chemical vapors penetrated compromised seals. Timothy's smaller suit fared worse. Nearly 70% of its protective layers had degraded. Detected vulnerability in cooling system, Diana reported. External heat exchanger venting sequence in 7 minutes. Shields must lower during cycle. Timothy's vital signs fluctuated on Powell's heads-up display. Morrison's voice cut through, core temperature rising, blood oxygen dropping. You need to share suit systems. Powell pulled Timothy closer, connecting their suit systems to share his remaining functional components. The awkward position slowed their movement through the shaft. He disabled security sensors as they crawled, precious seconds ticking away with each manual override. 3 cooling sectors shutting down, Hayes transmitted. Rerouting power to your position. Venting sequence accelerated to 4 minutes. They emerged into the cooling unit chamber. Massive machinery hummed around them, processing the facility's excess heat. Powell's tactical display showed security teams converging from multiple access points. Sonic pulse emitters powered up with high-pitched whines. Kardashian High Command growing suspicious, Ambassador Warren warned. Military commanders departing diplomatic session. Powell positioned Timothy behind a coolant tank. his suit integrity dropped to 15%. The caustic atmosphere pressed against failing seals as he assessed their options. 3 minutes remained until the external shields would lower for venting. Dr. Wren's voice came through clearly. Emergency treatment protocols prepared, transmitting specific requirements to extraction team. Boots echoed on metal catwalks. Security teams moved into position, their sonic weapons scanning for targets. Powell checked the tactical display 2 minutes until venting. Timothy's breathing grew more labored as their shared filtration system struggled against the toxic environment. Commander Drake transmitted coordinates for the incoming extraction team. The facility's external heat exchangers loomed ahead, their final barrier to freedom. Powell moved them toward the massive venting ports, staying low as sonic pulses probed the chemical haze around them. 1 minute remained. Their suit's integrity dropped into single digits as caustic vapor ate through the last protective layers. Security teams closed in from 3 directions. The cooling unit's massive fans spun faster, preparing for emergency heat dissipation. The extraction point waited just beyond the external shields. Powell positioned Timothy beside the venting port as countdown indicators flashed across his tactical display. 30 seconds remained until the shields would lower, exposing them to vacuum and freedom. Security teams stepped onto their level, sonic weapons charged. The cooling system's emergency venting sequence initiated. Metal groaned as massive machinery prepared to expel excess heat into space. Powell watched his tactical display, counting down the seconds until their window of opportunity would open. Powell's tactical display flashed a final warning as the venting sequence countdown reached 10 seconds. He scanned the chamber's architecture, his enhanced vision cutting through steam to locate maintenance access points near the external vents. A service platform waited just beyond the next port's standard engineering design for conducting repairs on the heat exchangers. He pulled Timothy close, quickly stripping components from both their deteriorating suits. Layer by layer, he wrapped the boy in the remaining intact sections, creating an improvised barrier against the caustic atmosphere. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he extracted a compact grappling unit from his equipment pack. "Brace yourself," Powell whispered to Timothy, securing the boy against his chest with maintenance straps crossed in an X pattern. The venting sequence initiated. Superheated plasma flooded the chamber with a roar that overwhelmed all other sound. Kardashian security teams retreated from the thermal surge, their sonic weapons useless in the intense heat. Powell's tactical display tracked their positions as they fell back to protected observation points. External shields lowered with a grinding of massive gears. Powell aimed the grappling unit through the widening vent port, targeting the maintenance platform's support strut. The line shot out, magnetic anchor securing with a solid click that transmitted through the cable. "Multiple atmospheric fighters launching," Diana transmitted. "ETA 3 minutes to your position." Timothy's vital signs flashed urgent warnings across Powell's display. The boy's blood oxygen levels dropped steadily as the improvised environmental protection began to fail. Morrison's voice cut through, 90 seconds until critical exposure levels. Powell activated the grappling line's retraction mechanism. The motor whined as it pulled them toward the vent port. Kardashian voices shouted commands through the superheated air behind them. The cable frayed visibly, individual strands snapping under their combined weight. They cleared the vent port. Kardashian atmosphere hit them like a physical blow, shocking their systems after the cooling chamber's heat. Powell's enhanced vision compensated for the planet's red-tinged light as he scanned for incoming threats. A Special Forces pod streaked through the atmosphere above them, landing with precision on a platform 2 sections away. 4 figures emerged, deploying portable shield generators that created a protective bubble against both weapons fire and the corrosive air. Fighters approaching from Vector 317, Commander Drake transmitted. 2 additional pods adjusting course to establish defensive perimeter. The remaining cable strands groaned. Powell pulled them onto the platform seconds before the line snapped completely. He shifted Timothy behind a structural support, checking the boys' vital signs through their linked systems. Energy weapons fire lanced past them as Kardashian security teams reached backup positions inside the facility. The shots dissipated harmlessly against the heat exchangers' hardened exterior, the facility's own safety systems, preventing damage to critical cooling infrastructure. Earth cruisers moving to challenge Kardashian fleet positions, Ambassador Warren transmitted. Diplomatic channels remain open but strained. 2 more Special Forces pods landed, their teams spreading out to create overlapping fields of fire. Shield generators hummed to life, forming a protective corridor between Powell's position and the nearest extraction team. Atmospheric fighters screamed toward them, their distinctive engine pitch cutting through Kardashian Prime's thick air. Powell tracked their approach vectors on his tactical display as he kept Timothy shielded from weapons fire. The boys' breathing grew more labored with each passing second. Extraction team moving to your position, Commander Drake transmitted. Maintain current cover. Special Forces operators advanced across the external platforms, their movements precise and coordinated. Shield generators created a rolling barrier of protection that advanced with them. Above, the 1st Fighter Squadron began their attack run. Timothy's vital signs continued their steady decline as Powell waited for the extraction team to reach them. The tactical display showed their window of opportunity narrowing with each passing second. Powell scanned the approaching Special Forces team through his degrading visor display. Commander Sarah Roberts led her operators across the platform with practiced efficiency, portable shield generators humming to life in their wake. A sharp tug at his back reminded him of their predicament. The frayed grappling line had become hopelessly entangled in the platform's safety railing. Shield coverage in 30 seconds, Roberts transmitted. Hold position. The 1st Heidke-class fighter screamed past, its distinctive wing configuration casting a dark shadow across the platform. Above them, Commander Drake's transport ships executed intricate maneuvers, their electronic countermeasures creating a web of sensor interference that forced the Kardashian pilots to rely on visual targeting. Timothy's breath came in shallow gasps. Powell's display showed the boys' blood oxygen levels dropping into dangerous territory. He pulled his combat knife from its sheath, sawing at the tangled cable while keeping his body between Timothy and the caustic atmosphere. 3 minutes 40 seconds until critical exposure, Morrison's voice crackled through static. Environmental protection failing at accelerated rate. The 2nd Special Forces pod touched down 2 platforms below. Its team deployed immediately, attaching safety lines to maintenance anchor points. They began constructing a vertical evacuation route, their movements quick and precise despite the toxic environment. A burst of weapons fire from the lead fighter impacted Roberts' forward shield generator. The protective bubble flickered, its effectiveness dropping sharply. Traces of Kardashian atmosphere leaked through, forcing the Special Forces team to activate emergency rebreathers. Shields at 40%, Roberts reported. Moving to reinforce your position. Powell cut through the last cable strands as Timothy's vital signs continued their downward spiral. Dr. Wren's medical data streamed across his tactical display, highlighting the progressive neural degradation caused by atmospheric exposure. Kardashian heavy transports detected, Diana transmitted. 3 vessels on approach vector. Commander Drake's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Civilian transports executing pattern delta, forcing transport vectors wide. The Special Forces team reached their position. Roberts directed 2 operators to extend their remaining shield generators' coverage, while others secured Timothy with pressure wraps. Powell's enhanced vision tracked multiple heat signatures gathering behind the facility's emergency airlocks. Cooling system failure in progress, Hayes reported. Safety protocols holding airlocks sealed. Estimate 3 minutes until manual override attempts succeed. Michael Warren's team landed on the lower maintenance ring, their pod's guidance systems smoking from the manual touchdown. They deployed portable jamming devices, creating electronic interference that disrupted Kardashian communication frequencies across the facility's perimeter. Direct route to evacuation point compromised, Roberts transmitted, assessing the damaged shield coverage. Alternative path required through maintenance subsections. Powell supported Timothy as they moved through the fluctuating shield barrier. Each step risked exposure to Kardashian's atmosphere. The boy's movements grew increasingly uncoordinated as neural symptoms intensified. Beginning final approach, the 2nd Special Forces team reported. Evacuation route secured through maintenance level 3. Another fighter screamed past, weapons fire impacting the heat exchanger's armored exterior. Structural vibrations traveled through the platform as Warren's jamming devices activated, filling local space with electronic noise that forced Kardashian pilots to break off their attack runs. Heavy transports holding at outer marker, Commander Drake transmitted. Civilian screen maintaining interference pattern. Timothy stumbled. Powell caught him, nodding the critical warnings flashing across his display. They reached the first section of the evacuation route as Roberts' team maintained shield coverage with their remaining generator. The vertical descent waited ahead a maze of maintenance ladders and safety lines stretching down through Kardashian's toxic atmosphere. Warning klaxons blared from the facility. Security teams had begun their attempts to override the airlock safety protocols. Powell secured Timothy's harness to the evacuation line as Roberts coordinated the defensive screen above them. The success of their extraction now depended on reaching the lower platform before either the airlocks opened or Timothy's neural degradation progressed beyond Dr. Morrison's ability to treat. The tactical display showed their window of opportunity narrowing with each passing second. 3 Heidke fighters regrouped for another attack run as Warren's team struggled to maintain their jamming field. Through gaps in the shield coverage, Kardashian's red sun painted the scene in shades of blood. Blood as Powell guided Timothy toward the first evacuation point. His tactical display tracked multiple heat signatures converging on their position. Kardashian fighters regrouping for another attack run. Movement on upper maintenance ring, Diana transmitted. Special Forces pod making emergency landing. Lieutenant Wilson's pod touched down 3 levels above, its landing struts grinding against the platform's metal surface. The pod's cargo bay opened, revealing atmospheric filtration equipment that could stabilize Timothy's rapidly declining condition. Filtration systems operational, Wilson reported, establishing safe zones on upper ring. Powell checked Timothy's vital signs as they reached the first vertical descent point. The boy's muscles twitched involuntarily, early signs of neural degradation from atmospheric exposure. Captain Tor's team worked below, magnetic anchors clicking into place as they constructed a more stable evacuation route. Automated defense systems activating, Hayes transmitted. Turret grid powering up. High-precision tracking beams swept across the platforms. Powell pressed Timothy against a support strut as defensive fire traced patterns through Kardashian's red-tinged atmosphere. Roberts directed her team into irregular movement patterns, protecting vital shield generators from the automated weapons. Kardashian warships executing pincer formation, Commander Drake's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Detecting tractor beam initialization sequences. A modified shuttle emerged from one of Drake's transport ships, its stealth systems masking its approach vector. Major David Warren piloted the craft through gaps in the Kardashian formation, positioning it for rapid extraction. Timothy stumbled again. Powell caught him before he fell, nodding the critical medical warning streaming across his display. Dr. Morrison's data showed accelerating muscle failure. They needed to reach Wilson's filtration equipment within minutes. Airlocks compromised in 8 minutes, Diana transmitted. Security teams bypassing automated lockouts. Robert's remaining shield generators hummed at maximum capacity as another fighter attack run saturated their position with weapons fire. Gaps appeared in the atmospheric barrier, forcing Powell to adjust their route through the remaining protected zones. Vertical traverse route established, Tors reported. Limited shield coverage between levels 2 and 3. Powell secured Timothy's harness to the magnetic guideline. Above them, Wilson's team deployed portable atmospheric barriers, creating a chain of survivable zones along the upper ring. The path to reach them crossed an exposed section of the facility's exterior where the original shields had failed completely. Earth cruisers powering weapons, Ambassador Warren transmitted. Kardashian fleet responding in kind. Commander Roberts coordinated her remaining operators to establish a defensive screen. Their equipment strained under repeated impacts as the fighters executed increasingly precise attack patterns. Each hit threatened to breach their remaining atmospheric protection. Timothy's fingers lost their grip on the safety line. Powell tightened the harness straps, compensating for the boy's weakening muscle control. The tactical display showed multiple routes to Wilson's position, each one compromised by either weapons fire or shield failures. Tors status on magnetic anchor network. Roberts transmitted. Network at 60% coverage. Eastern quadrant still exposed. Powell activated his tactical overlay, plotting a course through the maze of damaged platforms and fluctuating shield barriers. They would need to move through 3 separate safe zones to reach the first magnetic anchor point. Above them, Wilson's atmospheric barriers created a clear destination if they could reach the upper ring. New attack pattern, Diana warned. Fighters coordinating with automated turrets. The defense grid locked onto their position. Powell guided Timothy behind a heat exchanger housing as precision fire traced their previous location. Roberts' team adjusted their shield configurations, creating momentary safe corridors through the weapons coverage. 5 minutes until atmospheric filtration systems are ready, Wilson transmitted. Timothy's vital signs flashed urgent warnings. The boy's muscular control deteriorated with each passing second. Powell initiated the first vertical traverse, keeping his body between Timothy and the facility's exterior as they moved toward Tor's position. The magnetic anchors provided stable connection points, but gaps in the shield coverage exposed them to Kardashian's caustic atmosphere. A fighter screamed past at close range, its weapons fire impacting the platform above. Structural debris rained down, forcing Powell to swing them clear of the vertical guideline. Timothy's breathing grew more labored as they navigated through a section of compromised shields. Major Warren, status on extraction vector. Commander Drake transmitted. Holding position in sensor shadow. Ready for rapid approach once target reaches extraction point. Powell checked their progress on the tactical display. 2 more levels remained between their current position and Wilson's atmospheric barriers. The automated defense turrets tracked their movement, forcing them to pause between anchor points as Roberts' team drew their fire. Timothy's head lolled against Powell's shoulder. The tactical display showed critical degradation in multiple biological systems. They needed to reach the filtration equipment before complete neuromuscular failure set in. New contacts, Diana transmitted. Engineering teams breaching maintenance access points on level 4. The defense turrets adjusted their firing pattern. Powell pulled Timothy behind a support strut as the defense turrets adjusted their targeting solutions. Through his tactical display, he tracked Lieutenant Wilson's team completing their final atmospheric barrier installation on the upper ring. The protective corridor above offered salvation, separated from them by 15 meters of caustic Kardashian air. A brilliant flash lit the platform as one of Robert's portable shield generators overloaded, its protective field collapsing in a shower of sparks. Toxic atmosphere rushed into the gap, creating a deadly obstacle between them and Wilson's position. Shield configuration Alpha is no longer viable, Roberts transmitted, her voice tight with controlled urgency. Initiating contingency Echo 7. All operators, reconfigure remaining generators for mobile bubble formation. Powell watched as Roberts' team detached their generators from fixed mounting points, their movements precise despite the continuing weapons fire. The devices hummed as they synchronized, projecting a smaller but mobile protective field. Bubble integrity confirmed, an operator reported. Power reserves at 3 minutes. Ambassador Warren, status update. Roberts requested. 3 Kardashian assault shuttles launching from Military Complex 7, Diana cut in. Boarding teams equipped with atmospheric gear. Commander Drake's civilian screen cannot maintain position without triggering military response protocols. Timothy convulsed against Powell's chest, his oxygen readings plummeting into critical ranges. Dr. Morrison's medical data painted a grim picture: the boy's respiratory system was failing. TORS, extend magnetic anchor coverage across the gap, Powell transmitted. We move now. Captain Tor's team deployed additional anchor points, their magnetic clamps securing to the facility's exterior. The guide system would help stabilize their crossing, but offered no protection from the atmosphere or weapons fire. Hayes here. I can give you 30 seconds of reduced turret coverage, initiating cooling purge sequence on my mark. Major Warren's modified shuttle dropped through the facility's upper atmosphere, its hull glowing from the friction. He positioned the craft between Powell's team and the defense turrets, using its reinforced plating as additional cover. Shuttle taking damage, Warren reported. Can maintain position for 2 minutes maximum. Powell secured Timothy's harness to the magnetic guide line as Robert's team moved into position with their reconfigured shield generators. The protective bubble hummed to life around them, smaller but more focused than their previous coverage. Gull Morak's teams accessing atmospheric controls, Diana transmitted, detecting increased toxin concentrations in external environment. Haze to all units, turret disruption in 3, 2, 1, mark. The defense turrets ceased firing as their targeting systems reset. Powell guided Timothy into the mobile bubble as Robert's team began their advance. The magnetic guide line provided stability as they crossed into the exposed section. Kardashian fighters screamed past, their weapons fire impacting Warren's shuttle. The craft shuddered but held position, its modified shields deflecting the worst of the assault. 1 minute until shield power depletion, Roberts warned as they reached the midpoint of their crossing. Timothy's breathing grew more labored. Powell checked the medical telemetry: blood oxygen levels critically low. They needed to reach Wilson's atmospheric barriers before complete respiratory failure. Assault shuttles on final approach, Diana reported. Kardashian boarding teams preparing for deployment. The defense turrets powered back up, their targeting systems reacquired. Warren adjusted his shuttle's position, drawing their fire as Powell's team continued their advance. Shuttle hull breach detected, Warren transmitted. Structural integrity at 40%. Roberts coordinated her operators' movements, maintaining bubble geometry as they traversed the final meters. Timothy's vital signs continued their downward spiral as they approached Wilson's position. Airlock override in progress, Diana warned. Security teams accessing external platforms in 2 minutes. They reached the edge of Wilson's atmospheric barrier with 30 seconds of shield power remaining. Powell disconnected from the guide line, supporting Timothy's weight as they moved through the transition point. Kardashian High Command authorizing weapons-free engagement, Ambassador Warren transmitted. Earth cruisers crossing designated security perimeter. The mobile bubble flickered and died as they cleared the gap. Wilson's team rushed forward with portable medical equipment as Timothy's respiratory system approached complete shutdown. Behind them, Warren's shuttle disengaged from its defensive position, its hull scarred from multiple impacts. Through the facility's external sensors, Powell tracked the approaching Kardashian assault shuttles. Their boarding teams would reach the platforms within minutes, armed and equipped to operate in the toxic atmosphere. Above them, the situation between Earth and Kardashian warships escalated toward open conflict. Wilson's atmospheric barriers provided temporary safety, but they needed to move quickly to reach the final extraction point. Powell activated his tactical overlay, assessing their remaining route as Timothy received emergency medical treatment. The automated defense turrets adjusted their firing patterns, preparing for another coordinated assault with the incoming Kardashian fighters. Powell tightened his grip on Timothy as Robert's team moved into position around them. The mobile shield bubble hummed to life, its translucent field casting a pale blue glow across the exposed platform. Through his tactical display, he tracked the shifting patterns of weapons fire above them. "Shield configuration stable," Roberts transmitted. "Initiating crossing sequence. All operators maintain bubble geometry." They stepped into the gap. The caustic atmosphere pressed against the protective field, creating rippling distortions across its surface. Timothy's breathing came in short, ragged gasps against Powell's chest plate. "Oxygen saturation 84%, Dr. Morrison's system announced. Cardiac irregularities detected." Hayes' voice cut through the tactical channel. "Defense turret disruption sequence active. Grid sectors 7 through 12 powering down." The automated weapons fell silent. Major Warren's shuttle adjusted position overhead, its scarred hull absorbing multiple impacts from the Kardashian fighters. The craft's maneuvering thrusters fired in precise bursts, maintaining optimal coverage despite increasing damage. A metallic shriek pierced the air. The magnetic anchor point 20 meters to their left tore free from the facility's exterior, sending vibrations through the guide system. The entire team lurched sideways. "Guide line destabilizing," Tors transmitted, compensating with remaining anchor points. Powell shifted his weight, countering the sudden movement. Timothy's medical readings flashed urgent warnings across his display, heart rate climbing, blood pressure dropping. The boy's skin had taken on a bluish tinge. "Shuttle taking critical damage," Warren reported. "Port stabilizers failing." Diana's voice carried newfound urgency. "Kardashian assault shuttle deploying troops on maintenance level 6. Heavy weapons detected." The shield bubble's power indicator dropped below 40%. Its protective field fluctuated, creating momentary gaps that allowed wisps of toxic atmosphere to penetrate. Robert's operators adjusted their positions, redistributing power to maintain coverage. "External hatches cycling on levels 3 and 4, Diana transmitted. "Security teams accessing maintenance corridors." Above them, armored Kardashian troops moved into firing positions. Their heavy weapons powered up with an audible whine that carried through the thin atmosphere. Commander Drake's civilian transports launched their hidden tactical drones, the small craft emerging from sensor shadows to engage the approaching Kardashian warships. "Shield power at 35%, Roberts warned. Field integrity compromised in multiple sectors. Timothy's vital signs continued their downward spiral. His oxygen saturation dropped to 82% as his heart struggled to maintain circulation. Powell watched the distance marker to Wilson's position count down with agonizing slowness. "Kardashian High Command has authorized weapons-free engagement," Ambassador Warren transmitted. Earth Fleet Command advising immediate withdrawal. The shield bubble flickered dangerously. Roberts directed her operators to tighten their formation, sacrificing coverage area to maintain protection around Timothy. Toxic atmosphere seeped through growing gaps in the field. 10 meters to atmospheric barrier, Tours reported. Guide system stability at critical levels. Heavy weapons fire from the Kardashian position impacted nearby, creating shockwaves that threatened their already precarious balance. Warren's shuttle absorbed several direct hits, its hull integrity dropping into dangerous ranges. Shield power 20%, Roberts transmitted. Field collapse imminent. Timothy's body went limp. The medical system screamed warnings as his oxygen levels plummeted below 80%. Through the failing shield bubble, Powell could see Wilson's team preparing emergency medical equipment at the barrier's edge. 5 meters, Tours called out, maintaining final anchor points. The defense turrets powered back up, their targeting systems reacquiring lock. Warren's shuttle executed a final defensive maneuver, drawing their fire despite critical damage warnings across multiple systems. Shield failing, Roberts announced. Power reserves depleted. The protective field collapsed 3 meters from Wilson's position. Powell lunged forward, crossing the final distance as toxic atmosphere swirled around them. Timothy's vital signs flatlined momentarily before Wilson's team pulled them through the atmospheric barrier. Medical team, priority 1, Wilson transmitted as his operators rushed forward with emergency equipment. Kardashian forces breaching upper levels. Through the barrier's transparent surface, Powell watched Roberts' team sprint across the gap, their shield generators completely drained. Warren's shuttle disengaged, its hull streaming atmosphere from multiple breach points. Above them, the first shots were exchanged between Earth and Kardashian warships. The first exchange of weapons fire between Earth and Kardashian vessels illuminated the toxic atmosphere above them. Powell shifted Timothy's weight as another anchor point tore free, sending vibrations through the guide system. The shield bubble's power indicator dropped to 25%, creating visible distortions in the protective field. Powell turned his body, using his armor to shield Timothy from a particularly unstable section of the bubble where caustic vapor had begun to seep through. The boy's medical readings painted an increasingly dire picture, core temperature rising dangerously as his organs showed signs of systemic stress. Implementing emergency formation, Roberts transmitted. All operators linked tactical harnesses. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, connecting their harness systems into an interlocked human chain around Powell and Timothy. The structure helped distribute the growing gravitational stress from the failing anchor points, but left them more exposed to incoming fire. Warren's shuttle lurched sideways, its port thrusters sputtering and dying. The craft began a controlled descent, switching to secondary maneuvering systems as hull breach warnings cascaded across multiple sections. Despite the damage, Warren maintained position between them and the defense turrets. Unknown satellite activation detected, Diana announced. Source: Earth Defense Station Alpha. A series of dormant maintenance platforms lit up in orbit, broadcasting interference patterns that disrupted the targeting systems of nearby Kardashian fighters. The automated defense turrets struggled to maintain lock, their shots going wide. CTO Reese confirms satellite activation, Ambassador Warren transmitted. Kardashian High Command demanding immediate explanation. Penetration units detected, Tours called out. Kardashian ground teams deploying shield disruptors, reconfiguring remaining generators for overlapping coverage. Timothy convulsed against Powell's chest plate. Dr. Morrison's system highlighted dangerous spikes in the boy's core temperature, accompanied by signs of accelerating organ stress. Through the facility's external sensors, Powell could see Wilson's medical team preparing emergency equipment, their movements carrying clear urgency. Hayes's voice carried strain. Defense turret disruption failing. System rerouting through secondary circuits. initiating emergency cooling purge on sectors 13 through 15. The automated weapons began powering up in sequence, forcing Hayes to split his attention between multiple disruption points. More turrets activated with each passing second, their targeting systems slowly coming back online. "Alert," Diana transmitted. Gul Marek authorizing emergency platform purge. Chemical concentration charging. Time to release, 3 minutes. Commander Drake's civilian transports released their final wave of tactical drones. The small craft executed precise collision courses with approaching Kardashian assault shuttles, their impacts buying precious seconds as armored troops struggled to deploy their equipment. Powell checked the distance marker, still over 50 meters to Wilson's position. The shield bubble's power continued to drop, its protective field becoming increasingly unstable. Timothy's vital signs deteriorated further as traces of toxic atmosphere penetrated the failing barriers. "Shield power at 15%, Roberts warned. "Structural integrity compromised." Warren's damaged shuttle maintained its defensive position through a series of carefully controlled bursts from its remaining thrusters. The craft's hull groaned under sustained weapons fire, its modified armor beginning to buckle. "Platform purge charging," Diana updated. 2 minutes until release. Detecting extreme toxin concentration in preparation chambers. Timothy's medical readings flashed urgent warnings across Powell's display. The boy's core temperature continued to rise as his organs showed increasing signs of failure. Wilson's team had moved their emergency medical equipment as close to the barrier as possible, ready to begin treatment the moment Powell reached them. The interlocked operators around Powell tightened their formation as another magnetic anchor point failed. The human chain absorbed the gravitational shift, but the movement caused additional strain on the already failing shield bubble. Caustic vapor began seeping through widening gaps in the protective field. "Shield power critical," Roberts transmitted. 10% remaining. Through the deteriorating bubble, Powell could see Wilson's atmospheric barrier ahead, still 40 meters away. Above them, the orbital battle intensified as Earth vessels engaged Kardashian warships. The maintenance satellites continued broadcasting their interference patterns, their effectiveness slowly diminishing as Kardashian systems adapted. The automated defense turrets powered up in sequence, their targeting systems reacquiring lock despite Hayes's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain disruption. Warren's shuttle absorbed another direct hit, its starboard stabilizers failing completely. "Platform purge sequence. 60 seconds, Diana warned. Emergency evacuation protocols engaging across all external sections. Powell shifted Timothy as the shield bubble's power dropped to 12%. Sections of the protective field turned translucent, toxic atmosphere seeping through like water through failing dam. His combat augmentations highlighted stable portions of the remaining coverage in his tactical display. He maneuvered Timothy into these shrinking safe zones, each movement precisely calculated. "Shield collapse accelerating," Roberts transmitted. Multiple field segments failing. Above them, Warren's shuttle executed a final defensive maneuver. The craft's remaining thrusters fired in a complex pattern, positioning its scarred hull between the team and 2 approaching Kardashian fighters. Energy weapons struck the shuttle's port side, rupturing the engine housing in a spray of superheated metal. "Lost port propulsion," Warren announced, initiating emergency landing on maintenance platform Delta. The shuttle descended rapidly but controlled, its sacrifice buying precious seconds of coverage. Through the facility's external sensors, Powell tracked a small object launching from one of Drake's civilian transports. The emergency drop pod cut through the toxic atmosphere, its trajectory ending precisely at Wilson's position. "Master Sergeant Donovan on station," Wilson transmitted. "Prototype field stabilizer ready for deployment." Timothy convulsed again. His blood oxygen dropped to 78% as cellular degradation warnings flashed across Powell's display. Dr. Morrison's system highlighted spreading tissue damage from toxic exposure. Implementing shield reconfiguration, Torres called out. All operators, execute layered defense pattern. The remaining shield generators shifted, creating overlapping barriers along Powell's approach vector. Tor's team exposed themselves to the caustic atmosphere, their tactical armor offering minimal protection against the corrosive environment. Access confirmed, Hayes transmitted. Initiating maintenance sequence Alpha 7. Temporary atmospheric window opening in 3 seconds. A narrow corridor of relatively clean air formed ahead of them, created by precise manipulation of the facility's processing systems. Powell guided the team forward as multiple shield segments failed simultaneously. Their linked tactical harnesses became their primary protection, each operator moving in perfect synchronization to maintain stability. Kardashian security initiating containment lockdown, Diana warned. Implementing system overrides. Time to complete facility seal, 40 seconds. The prototype field stabilizer powered up at Wilson's position, its experimental technology interfacing with their failing shield bubble. The device's energy signature pulsed across Powell's tactical display, temporarily reinforcing their remaining protection. Shield penetration units active, Roberts transmitted. Field integrity compromised in sectors 3 through 9. Commander Drake's last tactical drones exhausted their interference patterns. Weapons fire from Kardashian positions became increasingly accurate, forcing the linked operators to adjust their formation with each impact. The caustic atmosphere pressed against their failing defenses as they covered the final meters to safety. Platform purge sequence, 30 seconds, Diana updated. Toxin concentration exceeding filtration capacity. Timothy's vital signs continued their downward spiral. His skin had taken on a darker blue tinge as cellular damage spread through his system. Wilson's team prepared their atmospheric filtration equipment at the barrier's edge, though Powell's sensors indicated the increasing toxin levels would soon overwhelm even their specialized gear. Distance to barrier, 2 meters, Torres called out. Maintaining final defense configuration. The shield bubble entered catastrophic failure. Multiple segments collapsed at once, creating widening gaps in their protection. Toxic atmosphere rushed through the breaches as their tactical harnesses strained to maintain structural integrity. Powell focused on the stable zones highlighted by his combat systems, positioning Timothy within the last fragments of protection as they closed the remaining distance. Purge sequence, 15 seconds, Diana transmitted. Containment doors cycling. The prototype field stabilizer's energy pulse intensified, creating a temporary corridor through the caustic atmosphere. Wilson's team moved forward with their filtration equipment as Powell's enhanced reflexes guided them through the final approach. Their linked harnesses groaned under the gravitational stress as another anchor point failed. Shield configuration failing, Torres warned. Generators reaching maximum output. Powell watched the distance marker count down the final meter to safety, feeling Timothy's pulse weaken against his chest plate as the emergency reached its critical moment. The shield bubble's power plummeted below 5%, its protective field dissolving into fragments of azure light. Powell tracked the catastrophic failure spreading across his tactical display as Timothy's shallow breathing echoed through his armor's sensors. Shield critical, Roberts transmitted. 4.8% and dropping. A brilliant flash of blue-white energy erupted from Wilson's position. The prototype field stabilizer activated, projecting a bridge of protective energy that cut through the caustic atmosphere. Master Sergeant Donovan stood at the controls, his movements precise as he adjusted the experimental device's output. Stabilizer online, Donovan transmitted. Path established. Time window, 30 seconds. The maintenance platform shuddered. A Kardashian fighter's weapon's impact tore through support struts, creating a 2-meter gap directly in their path. Powell's enhanced vision tracked falling debris through the toxic fog as his combat systems calculated trajectory options. Executing emergency jump, Powell transmitted. Maintain harness tension. His augmented muscles coiled, distributing power through his armor's servojoints. The linked tactical harnesses stretched taut as Powell launched forward, Timothy secured against his chest plate. The team moved as one unit, their formation holding stable through the arc of the jump. Maintenance drones activated across the facility's exterior, their command signals traced to a transmission source within the industrial sector. The machines positioned themselves between Powell's team and the defense turrets, their metal frames absorbing incoming fire. Drones providing coverage, Technical Officer Morrison transmitted from his concealed position, maintaining legitimate maintenance protocols. Timothy's blood oxygen dropped to 6 to 5%. His skin had taken on a darker blue as cellular damage spread through his system. Wilson's team powered up their atmospheric filtration unit, its medical displays indicating a third ISCON treatment cycle. 3 Kardashian heavy cruisers moved into attack position above them. Their weapon arrays charged, targeting solutions locked on Wilson's position. Commander Drake's civilian transports held position, their hidden military capabilities still concealed. Caustic vapor ate through Corporal Warren's suit seals. Next to him, Rodriguez's armor showed spreading chemical damage. Both men maintained their positions in the defensive formation, using their bodies to shield Powell's approach despite their injuries. Suit breach, Warren transmitted through gritted teeth. Maintaining coverage. Hayes's atmospheric manipulation created unexpected reactions in the facility's chemical feeds. A dense fog formed around them, providing visual cover but accelerating the corrosion of their remaining protection. Powell's armor integrity dropped into the red zone. Alert, Diana transmitted. Phase shift troops deploying, multiple vectors. Elite Kardashian shock troops appeared through the toxic haze, their experimental armor allowing them to pass through standard energy barriers. Strike Leader Karn directed their advance from an elevated position, his orders carrying unexpected hesitation. Secure immediate perimeter, Karn transmitted to his forces. Confirm targets before engaging. Powell reached the edge of Wilson's position as their final protection failed. Timothy's vital signs flashed critical warnings across his display. The medical team stood ready, their atmospheric filtration unit humming at full power. Transfer on my mark, Wilson transmitted. 5 seconds to barrier breach. New contacts appeared on Diana's strategic display, additional Kardashian warships entering the system. Their energy signatures indicated capital ships moving to combat positions. Multiple hostile vessels detected, Diana updated. Time to weapons range, 4 minutes. The extraction team positioned themselves around the atmospheric barrier's edge. Timothy's life hung in the balance as Powell prepared for the crucial transfer, Kardashian forces closing in from all sides. Above them, Drake's civilian ships maintained their position as the heavy cruisers completed their targeting solutions. Through his tactical display, Powell watched Strike Leader Karn's troops advance with calculated precision, their phase-shift armor creating distortion patterns in the toxic fog. The next moments would determine not just Timothy's survival, but the fate of the entire extraction mission. Powell executed a rapid series of micro-adjustments through his augmented movement system, guiding Timothy through the last fragments of their failing shield protection. The prototype field stabilizer's energy bridge provided a narrow, safe corridor ahead. Initiating transfer sequence, Wilson transmitted. Medical team in position. The linked tactical harnesses creaked under the strain as Powell coordinated with his team. They moved as one unit, their armor servos whining as they maintained precise positioning. The caustic atmosphere pressed against the edges of Donovan's energy bridge, creating swirling patterns of chemical reaction. Timothy's vital signs flickered across Powell's display as they crossed the final distance. The medical team's atmospheric filtration unit hummed at full power, its connection port extended and ready. Through his tactical overlay, Powell tracked Strike Leader Karn's troops establishing a perimeter rather than pressing the attack. "Stabilizer reaching thermal limits," Donovan announced, his hands dancing across the prototype's controls. "Reducing coverage radius by 40%. The energy bridge contracted, intensifying its protective field. Powell guided Timothy through the narrowed safe zone as Wilson's team moved forward with practiced efficiency. The medical connection port locked into place with a pneumatic hiss. "Beginning toxin purge," Dr. Morrison transmitted. "Blood oxygen rising to 68%. A harsh grinding sound drew Powell's attention to Warren and Rodriguez. Their armor showed spreading chemical damage, suit integrity alarms blaring through the tactical network. "Emergency extraction required," Powell transmitted. "TORs, reconfigure harness anchor points." The team responded instantly, transforming their tactical harnesses into an improvised rescue system. Warren and Rodriguez's armor scraped against the platform as the pulleys engaged, drawing them toward the protection of Wilson's containment field. Diana's strategic display updated with new contacts. Medical evacuation vessels launching from surface. Detection systems indicate modified boarding equipment aboard. Through the facility's external sensors, Powell observed Commander Drake's civilian ships maintaining station. Lieutenant Sarah Warren's tactical analysis highlighted a vulnerability in the Kardashian cruiser's shield matrix, a tempting target that would reveal their true capabilities if exploited. "Level 3 maintenance purge initiating," Hayes transmitted. "Creating chemical barrier at grid coordinates Echosven. Industrial waste products sprayed from reconfigured processing vents, forming a pressurized wall between their position and the approaching Kardashian forces. The facility's automated systems accepted Hayes's commands as routine maintenance procedures." Powell's tactical display tracked the medical evacuation ship's approach vectors. Their trajectories matched standard humanitarian protocols, but weapon signatures leaked through their sensor masking. "Containment field showing strain," Wilson reported, "increasing power to filtration systems." The protected atmosphere around them wavered as chemical concentrations rose. Wilson's team worked rapidly, reinforcing critical nodes in the field generator's power distribution network. Timothy's medical readings showed improvement, but Dr. Morrison's system indicated he needed additional treatment time. "Diplomatic channel request incoming," Diana transmitted. "Admiral Parker reports Kardashian High Command seeking emergency communication." Strike Leader Karn's troops maintained their containment formation, their phase-shift armor creating rippling distortions in Hayes's chemical barrier. Karn himself remained at his elevated position, observing the situation with calculated restraint. "Warning," Diana updated. "Field stabilizer approaching critical thermal threshold." Donovan's hands moved across the prototype's controls with increasing urgency. The energy bridge fluctuated, its protective effect holding stable but requiring constant adjustment. Timothy's blood oxygen reached 72% as the filtration system continued its work. The maintenance platform shuddered as another Kardashian weapon's impact struck nearby support structures. Through the swirling chemical fog, Powell tracked multiple approach vectors available to Gul Marak's boarding teams. The medical evacuation ships continued their descent, maintaining the pretense of humanitarian response while closing into attack range. Wilson's containment field generators strained against the increasing toxicity. The protection around them remained intact, but power fluctuations rippled through the system as chemical concentrations exceeded expected parameters. Dr. Morrison's medical displays indicated Timothy needed 7 more minutes of treatment to reach minimum safe levels for transport. Platform structural integrity at 60%, Diana warned. Multiple stress fractures detected in primary support beams. The situation balanced on a knife's edge as Powell coordinated his team's defensive positions. Through his tactical display, he watched Strike Leader Karn raise his hand, silently signaling his troops to hold their current formation. The gesture bought precious seconds as Timothy's treatment continued under the protection of their steadily weakening containment field. Treatment cycle 1 complete, Dr. Morrison announced, his fingers dancing across the medical interface. Blood oxygen at 7 to 4%, 8 minutes minimum required for transport stability. Powell tracked the shifting tactical situation through his display as Timothy's vital signs stabilized. Strike Leader Karn's phase-shift troops maintained their positions, creating a defensive ring rather than pressing the attack. A burst of encoded data flashed across facility channels. Diana's analysis matrix decoded Karn's transmission in real time. Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha. Biological contamination detected, implementing immediate quarantine procedures. Clever bastard, Tors whispered through the tactical net. He's using their own protocols against them. The approaching medical evacuation vessels adjusted course. 2 continued their approach while the third peeled away, its trajectory matching standard biological containment retrieval patterns. Through his enhanced vision, Powell observed Gul Morak's command ship repositioning for optimal weapons coverage. New contacts, Diana transmitted. 6 Kardashian destroyers entering high orbit. Quantum signature matches Prima Fleet rapid response vessels. Warren and Rodriguez lay prone as Wilson's medical team worked to neutralize their chemical burns. Their armor's diagnostic feeds provided crucial atmospheric data, allowing Hayes to fine-tune the containment field's composition. Field integrity holding at 82%, Wilson reported, adjusting harmonic frequencies to match atmospheric density. Hayes's hands moved across his terminal with practiced efficiency. Found it primary atmospheric processor vulnerability. I can trigger an emergency scrubbing cycle, but it'll drain power from the shield generators. What's our radiation exposure window? Powell asked. 3 minutes maximum before critical exposure levels, Hayes replied. The facility's position relative to Kardash's sun leaves minimal margin for error. The prototype field stabilizer emitted a high-pitched whine. Donovan extracted power cells from their remaining tactical gear, creating an improvised power distribution network. Stabilizer modifications complete, Donovan transmitted. 12 minutes of operation at current capacity. Timothy's medical readings showed steady improvement as Morrison's filtration system continued its work. Through the tactical net, Powell observed Gul Morak's security protocols cascading through facility systems lockdown procedures that required high-level authorization. Ambassador Warren reports movement on the diplomatic front, Diana transmitted. Senior Legate Durok's faction pushing for negotiated resolution. Another Kardashian weapons impact struck nearby, sending vibrations through the maintenance platform. The medical evacuation ships maintained their approach vector, their true capabilities hidden beneath civilian transponder codes. Executing power transfer to atmospheric processors, Hayes announced. Beginning scrubbing cycle in 3, 2, 1. The facility's environmental system surged as Hayes's commands took effect. Toxic concentrations in their immediate vicinity began to decrease, but warning indicators showed radiation levels rising as shield power dropped. Radiation exposure at 20% of critical, Diana updated. 2 minutes 40 seconds remaining at current levels. Powell watched through his tactical display as Karn's troops adjusted their formation, maintaining the quarantine perimeter while positioning themselves to block lines of fire from other Kardashian units. The deception bought precious time as Timothy's treatment continued under Wilson's containment field. Blood oxygen reaching 78%, Morrison transmitted. 6 minutes remaining for minimum transport stability. Commander Drake's civilian transports maintained position as the Kardashian destroyers established their blockade formation. The situation balanced between tactical necessity and diplomatic opportunity as Timothy's treatment countdown continued. Through his enhanced vision, Powell observed micro-fissures developing in the maintenance platform's support structure. The combined effects of weapons damage and chemical exposure threatened their position's structural integrity. Platform showing increasing stress patterns, Diana warned. Load distribution becoming critical in sectors 3 and 7. The prototype field stabilizer's jury-rigged power system held steady as Donovan monitored its output. Warren and Rodriguez's armor continued providing atmospheric data as their burns received treatment inside the containment field. Detecting power fluctuations in facility shield grid, Hayes transmitted. Radiation exposure approaching 30% of critical threshold. The tactical situation grew more complex with each passing second as Powell coordinated his team's defense. Through it all, Timothy's vital signs continued their slow but steady improvement under Morrison's care. Kardashian warships maneuvered above them while diplomatic channels remained active with Earth's government. The next few minutes would determine whether the situation tenacitied through negotiation or escalated into broader conflict. Powell maintained his focus on the immediate tactical situation as Timothy's treatment countdown continued. Solar storm approaching, Diana transmitted. Radiation levels spiking across all sensor bands. Powell's tactical display filled with updated telemetry as Kardash's sun unleashed a massive electromagnetic surge. The facility's shields flickered, their power distribution network straining to compensate. Field stabilizer experiencing power fluctuations, Donovan reported, his fingers moving rapidly across the prototype's control surface. Core capacity insufficient for dual coverage. Through his enhanced vision, Powell observed Colonel Telak Vaz's Special Sciences Division deploying atmospheric processors along the facility's outer sectors. Toxic concentrations rose systematically as their equipment activated. Containment field integrity dropping, Wilson transmitted. Increasing power draw to maintain protective barrier. Hayes's hands flew across his terminal. Detecting shield reset sequence preparing to initiate. Third ISCON vulnerability window approaching when radiation front hits. Timothy's medical readings showed blood oxygen reaching 82%. Dr. Morrison adjusted filtration parameters as the containment field fluctuated around them. Treatment requires 4 more minutes. Moving him now risks systemic shock. Diana's strategic display updated with new contacts. 6 Earth-registered freighters detected approaching from Sector 9. Kardashian destroyer formation adjusting to investigate. The tactical network highlighted a temporary gap in the Kardashian blockade as their ships reconfigured shields against the approaching radiation wave. Lieutenant Marcus Powell's sensor analysis from Commander Drake's ship indicated a 3-minute window for potential extraction. Strike Leader Karn transmitted another update through facility channels. Phase shift armor experiencing atmospheric contamination. Multiple suit breaches detected. Maintaining quarantine protocol alpha. Stabilizer core at critical threshold, Donovan announced. Must choose between field coverage or containment barrier. No power for both. Powell observed the approaching medical evacuation vessels through external sensors. Their seemingly humanitarian approach masked weapon signatures that grew stronger with each passing second. Ambassador Warren reports progress with Legate Durok's faction, Diana transmitted. Unofficial channels active for negotiated resolution. The maintenance platform groaned as structural stress increased. Hayes's atmospheric scrubbing cycle continued, reducing local toxicity, but radiation exposure climbed steadily as shield power remained diverted. 50 seconds until solar storm impact, Diana updated. Facility shields preparing reset sequence. Warren and Rodriguez's armor sensors tracked rising chemical concentrations as Colonel Vaz's team methodically contaminated surrounding sectors. Wilson's containment field wavered under the increasing environmental pressure. 3 minutes until destroyer shield gap aligns with extraction vector, Diana transmitted. Medical evacuation vessels maintaining approach. Powell coordinated tactical data through his enhanced display. The approaching solar storm would disrupt communications and shields, but also provided cover for potential movement. Success required precise timing between multiple factors: Timothy's treatment, the shield reset, destroyer formation gap, and maintaining sufficient protection against the facility's deteriorating atmosphere. Treatment cycle reaching final phase, Morrison reported. Blood oxygen at 85%, 3 minutes required for minimum stability. The prototype field stabilizer emitted warning tones as Donovan managed its failing power system. Through the tactical net, Powell watched Strike Leader Karn orchestrate another series of equipment malfunctions, maintaining his defensive perimeter while avoiding direct confrontation. Radiation front approaching, Diana warned. 30 seconds until facility shield reset. Timothy's vital signs remained stable as Morrison's filtration system continued its work. The extraction team's position balanced precariously between competing pressures: environmental hazards, tactical opportunities, and medical necessities converging into a single critical moment. Shield reset sequence initiating, Hayes transmitted. Vulnerability window opens in 10 seconds. Powell tracked multiple tactical vectors through his display as the solar storm's leading edge reached their position. Above them, the Kardashian destroyer formation continued adjusting their shields, creating a temporary gap in their coverage pattern. The next few minutes would determine their success or failure, as environmental, tactical, and medical factors aligned into a narrow window of opportunity. The solar storm's electromagnetic surge slammed into the facility's shields. Cascading power fluctuations rippled through their systems as radiation levels spiked across sensor bands. Containment field dropping to 6 to 7%, Wilson transmitted, his hands moving rapidly across the medical controls. Emergency power conservation protocols engaged. Donovan surveyed their remaining equipment, eyes narrowing as calculations ran through his neural interface. I can salvage power cells from our spare tactical suits. Give me 2 minutes. He stripped components from 3 suits with precise movements, reconfiguring power distribution nodes into an improvised converter. The device hummed to life, channeling energy directly into Wilson's containment field. Field stability increasing, Wilson reported, holding at 7 to 2%. Through his enhanced vision, Powell observed several team members now operating with minimal environmental protection. Their armor's diagnostic feeds showed elevated exposure warnings as they sacrificed personal safety for Timothy's treatment bubble. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted new movement patterns among the Kardashian destroyers, detecting shield reconfiguration across enemy fleet. Major Kane transmitting data: potential extraction corridor identified. The corridor appeared on Powell's display, a narrow path through the blockade that would exist for exactly 3 minutes as the destroyers adjusted their shield geometries against the solar storm. A priority transmission cut through their tactical channel. This is Colonel Telak Vaz to all Special Sciences Division units. Commence atmospheric testing in sectors 7 through 12. Authorization code Delta 79. Strike Leader Karn's response came immediately. Emergency decontamination protocol now in effect. All personnel must maintain position until completion. Estimated duration, 15 minutes. Powell watched Karn's troops hold their defensive ring, using procedural authority to delay Vaz's testing order. Through the containment field, Timothy's medical readings continued their slow improvement. Hayes's fingers danced across his terminal, initiating maintenance subsystem exploit, targeting shield generator reset sequence. Now, the facility's power grid fluctuated as Hayes's code took effect. Shield effectiveness dropped by 30%, but automated security protocols activated in response. Metal barriers slid across exterior access points as the facility entered lockdown. Earth freighters deploying navigation buoys, Diana transmitted. Detecting specialized interference patterns affecting Kardashian targeting systems. Morrison monitored Timothy's vital signs as the containment field stabilized under Donovan's improvised power supply. Treatment at 85% completion. Needs 7 more minutes for minimum transport stability. New devices emerged from Colonel Vaz's position, sleek atmospheric processors that began pumping corrosive gas into the surrounding sectors. Powell's tactical display showed toxicity levels rising steadily around their position, concentrating remaining shield power to maintain viable air pocket, Hayes reported. Coverage area reduced to 12-meter radius. Ambassador Warren's diplomatic update flashed across their secure channel. Legate Duroc has secured faction support. Extraction must appear civilian in nature. Repeat. Maintain humanitarian cover story. Powell integrated the new constraints into their tactical planning. The medical evacuation vessels would need to complete the extraction without revealing their military capabilities. Their window of opportunity narrowed with each passing second. Toxicity levels increasing geometrically, Diana warned. Vaz's processors will reach maximum output in 9 minutes. Timothy's blood oxygen levels held steady at 87% as Morrison's filtration system continued its work. The prototype field stabilizer whined under the strain of Donovan's improvised power converter. Solar storm interference peaking, Hayes transmitted. Facility shield reset in 15 seconds. Powell watched multiple tactical vectors converge through his enhanced display: the storm's electromagnetic disruption, the destroyer formation's temporary weakness, and the narrow window of reduced facility defenses. Success would require precise coordination of each factor while maintaining the illusion of a civilian medical evacuation. Treatment entering final phase, Morrison reported. 6 minutes remaining for minimum stability. The solar storm's radiation front intensified as the facility's shields prepared to reset. Above them, the Kardashian blockade began their synchronized shield reconfiguration, creating the extraction corridor Major Kane had identified. Time compressed around them as multiple deadlines approached their critical intersection. The solar storm struck with blinding intensity. Sensor displays flickered and communication channels filled with static as the electromagnetic wave front washed over the facility's shields. Powell's enhanced vision automatically adjusted, filtering the brilliant flares that penetrated the facility's windows. Communications blackout confirmed, Diana transmitted through their local tactical net. Kardashian ground forces cut off from orbital command. Wilson's containment field fluctuated wildly as radiation levels spiked. Power surge detected in primary stabilizers. Donovan moved instantly, hands flying across the exposed components of his jury-rigged power converter, rerouting through emergency buffers. He stripped vital parts from 2 more damaged tactical suits, integrating them into his makeshift system. The containment field's erratic fluctuations smoothed gradually as the new components came online. Field stability holding at 72%, Wilson reported, monitoring his displays. Minimum safe threshold maintained. Through the facility's external sensors, Powell tracked Captain Webb's freighter as it released its specialized cargo. High-altitude atmospheric processors, their commercial markings clearly visible, deployed in a precise pattern above their position. The devices activated automatically, creating a cylindrical corridor of filtered air that stretched from the upper atmosphere to their location. Atmospheric processors online, Webb transmitted, establishing extraction corridor under civilian protocols. Colonel Vaz's chemical weapons achieved maximum concentration, forcing Powell to adjust their defensive positions. Team 2 and 3 fall back to inner perimeter, maintain coverage around the treatment zone. Rodriguez and Warren retreated from their forward positions as caustic vapor filled the outer corridors. Their sensor readings showed toxicity levels climbing past 60% in the abandoned sectors. Through his tactical display, Powell observed Strike Leader Karn implementing his latest deception. All units, commence emergency equipment inspection, Karn ordered over the facility channels. Detail strip atmospheric gear for radiation damage assessment. Karn's troops methodically disabled their own equipment, creating a perimeter of immobilized forces that technically followed protocols while providing the extraction team additional security. Colonel Vaz's voice cut through the facility network. Strike Leader, explain this delay. Standard safety protocols, Colonel, Karn responded. Solar radiation may have compromised suit integrity. Inspection cycles must be completed before resuming operations. Dr. Morrison's medical readings drew Powell's attention. Timothy's blood oxygen stabilizing at 90%. 4 minutes until transport capability achieved. Hayes's fingers moved across his terminal as he exploited the facility's environmental systems. Detecting automated recalibration cycle. Toxicity levels will drop for approximately 40 seconds during each reset. A new contact appeared on their tactical display, a Kardashian medical transport approaching from the civilian spaceport. Diana's analysis flashed across their secure channel. Vessel registered to Dr. Alara Voss, Moderate Faction Medical Director. Commander Drake's tactical update highlighted the destroyer formation's shield fluctuations. The solar storm created predictable gaps in their coverage, synchronized with each radiation peak. Powell integrated the new data, calculating optimal extraction vectors through the temporary weaknesses. 3 minutes until minimum transport stability, Morrison reported as Timothy's vital signs continued improving. The containment field hummed steadily under Donovan's modified power system. Through his enhanced vision, Powell tracked multiple tactical elements converging. Webb's atmospheric corridor, the facility's recalibration cycles, the destroyer formation's shield gaps, and Dr. Voss's approaching medical transport. Success required precise coordination between each factor while maintaining their civilian cover story. Radiation peak approaching, Diana warned. Facility shields entering reset sequence. The extraction team held their positions around Timothy's treatment zone as the solar storm's next wave approached. Above them, the Kardashian blockade's synchronized shield adjustments created their first potential escape route, masked by the storm's electromagnetic interference. A proximity alert flashed across Powell's tactical display as Dr. Voss's medical transport initiated docking procedures with the facility's emergency bay. The solar storm's second radiation peak struck simultaneously, overwhelming power regulators throughout the complex. Automated identification protocols flickered offline as the transport glided into position. Docking clamps engaged, Hayes transmitted. Security scan bypass confirmed. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber as 2 circuits failed in Donovan's improvised power system. Orange sparks scattered across the floor as he lunged toward the converter, hands moving with practiced precision through the damaged components. Field stability dropping, Wilson called out. 68% and falling. Donovan stripped vital components from their remaining tactical suits, integrating them into his jury-rigged system, rerouting primary power flow. The containment field stabilized, but the cost was clear. Only Powell and Wilson retained full environmental protection. The rest of the team switched to emergency rebreathers, their displays showing 15 minutes of filtered air capacity. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted movement in the destroyer formation. 3 Kardashian warships broke away, moving to investigate the anomalous readings from Webb's sensor buoys. The resulting gap aligned perfectly with the atmospheric corridor. "Extraction route confirmed," Commander Drake transmitted. "Maintain civilian protocols." Caustic vapor filled the surrounding corridors as Vaz's processors reached 80% concentration. The facility's external maintenance systems began failing under the chemical assault. Warning klaxons sounded as automated safety protocols activated, forcing Kardashian troops to maintain their distance. A new data link appeared on Morrison's medical display. Incoming connection from CMO Warren aboard Voss's transport. Credentials authenticated through medical exchange protocols. "Transmitting full patient telemetry," Morrison responded, his hands steady on the medical controls. "Blood oxygen stable at 92%. Strike Leader Karn's voice cut through the facility channels. "Emergency equipment failure detected in atmospheric processors. All military personnel must evacuate affected sectors immediately. Civilian medical teams are cleared for emergency response." Powell watched through enhanced vision as Kardashian troops withdrew from their positions, their equipment genuinely damaged by Vaz's chemical agents. The deception provided perfect cover for their approaching medical transport. The solar storm's third radiation peak slammed into the facility. Hayes's exploit triggered instantly, sending the environmental systems into emergency purge sequences. Gaps appeared in the chemical concentration, synchronized with the atmospheric corridor above. "Treatment completion at 92%, Morrison transmitted. "Patient stable for transport in 2 minutes. The extraction team moved into position around Timothy's containment field. Powell integrated incoming tactical data radiation peaks, purge cycles, destroyer coverage gaps. Success required precise timing through multiple environmental hazards. "Initiating medical evacuation procedures," Dr. Voss transmitted through official channels. "Request priority access to emergency medical bay." Diana's tactical overlay highlighted their route through the facility. First purge cycle in 30 seconds. Atmospheric corridor aligned with destroyer gap. Timothy's vital signs held steady as Morrison prepared him for movement. The containment field hummed under Donovan's modified power system, ready for transfer to the transport's medical bay. "Radiation peak approaching," Hayes warned. "Facility shields entering emergency compensation mode." Powell signaled the team to final positions. Above them, the gap in the Kardashian blockade widened as the destroyers continued investigating Webb's sensor buoys. The elaborate deception reached its critical moment, their chance to extract Timothy under the perfect cover of legitimate medical necessity. "Movement window opens in 10 seconds, Diana transmitted. "Purge cycle beginning." "Execute," Powell transmitted as the purge cycle initiated. He lifted Timothy from the containment field, the remaining powered suits providing a mobile protective barrier. Morrison disconnected medical sensors with practiced efficiency, transferring monitoring duties to portable units integrated into Timothy's transport cocoon. The facility's tracking systems flickered and died as the solar storm's fourth peak struck. Static filled security displays while electromagnetic interference disrupted automated surveillance coverage. Through his enhanced vision, Powell tracked their improvised corridor glowing with filtered atmosphere. "Movement path confirmed," Diana transmitted. 90 seconds of reduced coverage. The team flowed into practice positions around Powell and Timothy. Rodriguez and Warren assumed the roles of medical technicians, their civilian credentials transmitting automatically through facility protocols. Donovan's modified power converter hummed as it maintained their protective field using energy from the remaining functional suits. A new alert flashed across Powell's tactical display as Security Officer Blackwood activated emergency ventilation protocols. Protective barriers of filtered air materialized in the medical bay's approach corridors, their deployment documented as standard hazardous materials containment. Ventilation barriers active, Blackwood transmitted. Approach corridors secured under civilian protocols. Through facility channels, CMO Warren's voice projected calm authority, transmitting complete patient profile to Kardashian Health Ministry. Emergency transfer request filed under Treaty Section 47B. The team advanced through Webb's atmospheric corridor, moving in precise synchronization with the facility's purge cycles. Timothy's vital signs remained stable on Morrison's portable displays. Around them, Vaz's processors struggled against the solar radiation, their control systems initiating automated safety protocols that created periodic gaps in chemical coverage. Engineering limitation confirmed, Hayes transmitted. Processor malfunctions documented as radiation response. A priority alert cut through their tactical channel as Dr. Kelara Nix's authorization code unlocked the medical bay's private landing pad. Emergency access granted, the facility's automated system announced. Hazardous materials containment protocols in effect. Powell led the team through another section of filtered atmosphere as Commander Drake's tactical update highlighted multiple extraction vectors. The destroyer formations' adjusted positions created additional gaps in their coverage, each one aligned with legitimate civilian evacuation routes. 3 viable corridors identified, Diana analyzed. All paths conform to medical transport protocols. Timothy's transport cocoon transmitted steady vital signs as they approached the medical bay's emergency access port. Dr. Voss's transport maintained position, its presence documented through multiple civilian medical channels. Strike Leader Karn's forces completed their equipment inspection, establishing a clear corridor marked in facility logs as a military exclusion zone. Approaching final security checkpoint, Hayes warned. Electromagnetic interference peak in 15 seconds. The solar storm's radiation front intensified, overwhelming the facility's automated systems. Security scanners flickered offline as the team moved through the checkpoint, their civilian medical credentials processing automatically. Powell's enhanced vision penetrated the electromagnetic interference, tracking multiple tactical elements converging toward their extraction window. Through his display, the operation's synchronized components aligned. Webb's atmospheric corridor, the facility's purge cycle, the destroyer formation's shield gaps, and Dr. Voss's waiting transport. Success required maintaining their civilian coverage through the final approach, while their environmental protection continued degrading. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted movement in the destroyer formation as the vessels adjusted their positions. Shield reconfiguration creating additional extraction vectors. Transport approach paths updated. The medical bay's private landing pad appeared ahead, its access protocols verified through Dr. Nix's authorization. Timothy's vital signs remained stable as Powell led the team toward their final extraction point. Above them, the Kardashian blockade's synchronized shield adjustments created multiple potential escape routes, each one masked by the solar storm's electromagnetic interference. Landing pad environmental seals engaged, Blackwood transmitted. Approach vector clear under civilian protocols. The team moved through another section of filtered atmosphere, their civilian credentials transmitting automatically through each security checkpoint. Around them, the facility's automated systems struggled against the combined effects of solar radiation and chemical saturation. Through multiple official channels, Their medical evacuation received layer upon layer of legitimate documentation. Powell's enhanced vision tracked Dr. Voss's transport adjusting its position as they approached the final security barrier. The solar storm's electromagnetic interference provided precise windows of reduced surveillance coverage, synchronized with their movement through the filtered atmospheric corridor. Their elaborate deception continued its careful dance between tactical necessity and operational legitimacy. Powell felt the change in air pressure as they crossed the final security barrier. His tactical display flickered with new alerts. The solar storm's electromagnetic interference reached critical intensity. Around them, security cameras and sensor arrays cycled into diagnostic modes, their status indicators blinking amber. 4 to 5 second window, Diana transmitted. Security systems entering diagnostic cycle. A sharp crack echoed through the corridor as Donovan's power converter failed. Orange sparks scattered across the deck plating as he dropped to one knee, hands moving through emergency protocols. Rerouting facility emergency power, Donovan transmitted, fingers dancing across his control interface. The mobile containment field surrounding Timothy fluctuated momentarily before stabilizing. Field integrity restored. Automated alerts echoed through facility channels as emergency lighting dimmed. Chief Medical Officer Warren's voice cut through the cascade of system warnings. Patient experiencing atmospheric stress. Implementing emergency stabilization protocols. Victor Ramirez activated his experimental purification units, creating localized pockets of filtered air that merged with Webb's processing corridor. The devices hummed to life, their activation documented through multiple medical channels. Purification field integration complete, Ramirez transmitted. Additional atmospheric support established. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked the changes in chemical concentration as Voss's processors initiated shutdown sequences. The solar radiation triggered automated safety protocols, reducing agent density throughout the exterior maintenance areas. Engineering Chief Davidson responding to system alerts, Hayes transmitted. Emergency maintenance protocols activating in adjacent sectors. Davidson's voice echoed through facility channels, implementing containment procedures in sections 12 through 15. All non-medical personnel clear affected areas immediately. Powell's tactical display highlighted 3 Kardashian medical transports on approach vectors. Their presence added urgency to the extraction timeline, but maintaining civilian protocols remained critical. Transport configurations match military medical units, Diana analyzed. Specialized security teams detected. Timothy's vital signs fluctuated on Morrison's display as they navigated another section of filtered atmosphere. Warren adjusted treatment parameters, his movements precise as he stabilized the readings. Implementing cardiac support protocols, Warren transmitted through official channels. Patient requiring immediate specialized care. The medical bay's private landing pad appeared ahead as Dr. Nix's authorization triggered decontamination sequences. Filtered air cascaded through ventilation systems, creating documented safety barriers around their approach vector. Decontamination cycle active, Blackwood confirmed. Approach corridor isolated under medical protocols. Strike Leader Karn's tactical teams established final positions, their presence creating an effective military exclusion zone. Facility sensors registered increasing chemical concentrations in adjacent sectors, validating their deployment through automated safety systems. Military access restricted, Karn transmitted. Hazardous materials protocols in effect. Dr. Voss's transport maintained position at the landing pad as Powell led the final approach. Above them, 2 Kardashian destroyers broke formation, creating sustained gaps in orbital coverage that aligned with their extraction vectors. 3 medical evacuation routes confirmed, Diana transmitted. all paths showing green under civilian protocols. Morrison's medical display showed Timothy stabilizing vital signs as they crossed the landing pad's environmental barrier. The elaborate deception continued its careful dance between tactical necessity and documented medical emergency, every movement supported by layers of legitimate authorization. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked multiple tactical elements converging toward their extraction window: the synchronized failures of Vaz's processors, the solar storm's interference patterns, Webb's atmospheric corridor, and the approaching Kardashian medical transports. Success required maintaining their civilian profile through the final phase of movement. Transport docking procedures initiated, Hayes transmitted as Dr. Voss's vessel extended its medical access port. The medical transport's docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud as facility alarms blared. Security displays flickered and died across the landing pad as the solar storm reached critical intensity. Powell's enhanced vision registered the cascading failure of automated defense systems, their status indicators cycling through emergency shutdown sequences. Defense grid entering reset cycle, Diana transmitted. Third ISCON window initiating. Donovan sprinted toward the transport's external power coupling, dragging his failing converter. Sparks scattered across the deck as he connected power feeds, creating an electromagnetic bridge between their position and the ship's medical bay entrance. Field extension stabilized, Donovan transmitted. Medical protocols verified. Through facility channels, automated logs documented the power transfer as standard emergency procedure. Timothy's vital signs remained steady as the atmospheric barrier solidified around them. A priority alert cut through their tactical network as a Kardashian emergency shuttle approached the secondary medical port. Health Ministry inspector arriving, Hayes transmitted. Dr. Calamari's confirmed aboard. Dr. Mari's authorization codes triggered automated quarantine protocols. Security barriers materialized around the medical bay perimeter as her presence established official oversight of the evacuation. Implementing standard quarantine measures, Dr. Mari's announced through facility channels. All non-medical personnel clear evacuation zones immediately. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted the approaching Kardashian medical transports as they encountered the solar storm's radiation front. Their engines flared as navigation systems compensated for electromagnetic interference. Military transports entering holding pattern, Diana transmitted. Approach vectors blocked by radiation protocols. A new series of alarms echoed through the facility as Security Chief Goran Rask responded to the atmospheric processor failures. Emergency containment doors slammed shut, sealing off sections affected by chemical saturation. Security containment active in sectors 12 through 18, Rask's voice announced. Civilian medical personnel maintain evacuation protocols. Warren activated specialized equipment aboard Dr. Voss's transport. Quarantine field generators hummed to life, extending a documented containment zone from the ship's boarding ramp. The barrier's status registered across both Earth and Kardashian medical networks. Containment field established, Warren transmitted. Patient transfer corridor secured. Strike Leader Karn's tactical teams adjusted their positions, channeling all approach vectors through radiation-saturated areas. Facility sensors automatically verified their deployment through safety protocols. The medical bay's primary pressure doors seized as power fluctuations intensified. James Morrison's voice cut through the cascade of system alerts, initiating hydraulic override. Stand by for emergency cycling. Backup systems engaged with a pneumatic hiss. The pressure doors retracted into their housing as Morrison's override triggered documented maintenance protocols. Hydraulic systems online, Morrison transmitted. Access restored under emergency procedures. Powell's tactical display highlighted two Kardashian heavy cruisers moving into orbital positions. Their weapon systems remained inactive as they established standard patrol patterns above the facility. Orbital assets maintaining civilian traffic protocols, Commander Drake transmitted. Medical priority clearance confirmed. The team advanced through the quarantine corridor as multiple elements synchronized around them. Timothy's transport cocoon transmitted steady vital signs, while automated logs documented each phase of their movement. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked the precise interaction of system failures, administrative delays, and radiation patterns, creating their extraction window. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted their remaining distance to the transport's medical bay entrance. 15 meters to final security checkpoint, she transmitted. Civilian protocols holding. Above them, the heavy cruiser's sensor sweeps penetrated the electromagnetic interference. Their presence added urgency to the extraction timeline while maintaining the operation's careful balance between tactical necessity and operational legitimacy. Facility alarms blared as the primary power grid failed, plunging the corridor into crimson emergency lighting. Powell's enhanced vision adapted instantly, tracking the systematic shutdown of non-essential systems. Main power grid offline, Diana transmitted. Security systems entering minimum capacity protocols. 9-second window confirmed. Through the emergency lighting, Dr. Thomas Reynolds' authorization codes cascaded through maintenance control networks. Pressure doors sealed with pneumatic hisses as his emergency equipment protection protocols activated. Maintenance corridors Delta through Kappa sealed, Reynolds transmitted from the primary hub, implementing radiation protection measures for critical medical systems. Donovan reached the transport's external power coupling, his modified converter sparking as he interfaced it with the ship systems. The connection stabilized with a low hum, creating a visible atmospheric bridge between the facility and transport. Status indicators flashed green across multiple medical channels. Power bridge established, Donovan transmitted, fingers dancing across his control interface. Readings matched standard evacuation parameters. Above them, Commander Drake's vessels executed precise orbital adjustments. Their engines flared briefly as they cited radiation interference through civilian channels. Powell's tactical display showed their new positions, creating an effective sensor barrier between Dr. Voss's transport and the Kardashian cruisers. Sensor shadow confirmed, Diana analyzed. Kardashian traffic control validating radiation avoidance patterns. A new cascade of alarms echoed through facility channels as Colonel Voss's atmospheric processors entered critical failure. Emergency evacuation protocols activated across multiple sectors, driving waves of non-medical personnel away from their position. Environmental contamination detected in sectors 15 through 20, facility systems announced. All non-essential personnel clear affected areas immediately. Timothy's vital signs spiked on Warren's display as they crossed the transport's threshold. The medical officer's hands moved with practiced efficiency, activating specialized stabilization equipment. The emergency intervention registered instantly through health ministry networks. Patient experiencing critical destabilization, Warren transmitted. Implementing advanced life support measures. Immediate evacuation required. Strike Leader Karn's tactical teams deployed radiation monitoring equipment at key intersections. Their sensor arrays activated in sequence, creating legitimate blockades across all direct approaches to the medical bay. Radiation monitoring grid active, Karn transmitted. All junction points secured under safety protocols. Powell's enhanced vision detected the approaching Kardashian medical transports through gaps in the electromagnetic interference. The vessel's modified engine signatures matched elite security configurations. Commander Corvin's breach teams on final approach. Diana transmitted. 3 minutes to facility range. The team moved through the atmospheric bridge toward Dr. Voss's medical bay. Timothy's transport cocoon transmitted steady vital signs as Warren's stabilization equipment maintained its documented emergency intervention. Around them, the facility's emergency power systems counted down toward reset, each second marked by the rhythmic pulse of backup generators. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked multiple tactical elements converging. The stabilized power bridge, Commander Drake's sensor screen, Karn's radiation barriers, and the approaching security forces. Their extraction window narrowed with each passing moment as facility systems prepared to restore normal operations. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted Commander Corvin's lead transport, adjusting its vector for final approach. 2 minutes to security team deployment, she transmitted. Civilian protocols holding. The medical bay's entrance beckoned ahead as emergency power continued its measured decline. The extraction operation entered its final phase, balanced between documented medical necessity and the approaching security response. Emergency power indicators pulsed red across Powell's enhanced vision as the facility's primary systems gave out. The steady thrum of backup generators filled the air, followed moments later by their own faltering rhythm as the secondary grid collapsed. Tertiary power systems engaging, Diana transmitted. Security grid at 12% capacity. Timothy's transport cocoon glided through the atmospheric bridge, Warren's hands moving across biocontrols as vital signs fluctuated on his display. The medical transport's interior illuminated with soft blue emergency lighting, casting stark shadows across specialized equipment. Senior Engineer Davidson's voice cut through facility channels, implementing radiation emergency protocols. All maintenance corridors not designated for medical evacuation are sealing. Heavy blast doors slid into place throughout the facility. Powell's tactical overlay highlighted the emerging physical barriers, systematically separating their position from Commander Corvin's approaching forces. Radiation signature detected in breach team equipment, Diana transmitted. Automated quarantine protocols triggering in approach corridors. Through enhanced vision, Powell observed Commander Drake's vessels executing precise maneuvers above them. Their engines pulsed in careful sequence, each movement documented through civilian traffic control as radiation avoidance measures. Sensor screen established, Commander Drake transmitted. Medical transport shielded under civilian protocols. Dr. Mari's voice echoed through facility channels, implementing Level 1 quarantine protocols. All non-medical personnel must undergo full decontamination before approaching evacuation zones. Donovan's fingers danced across his converter's interface, green status indicators reflecting off his focused features. Power bridge integration complete. Life support systems prioritized. The atmospheric bridge hummed with increased intensity as facility power redistributed according to medical emergency protocols. Timothy's vital signs stabilized on Warren's display as they guided the transport cocoon through the protected corridor. 3 Kardashian heavy cruisers on approach vector, Diana transmitted. Fleet Captain Dural assuming orbital control position. Strike Leader Karn's radiation monitoring stations activated in sequence around them, their sensor arrays creating a documented perimeter. Monitoring grid online. Safety protocols validated by facility systems. Dr. Nix's authorization codes cascaded through medical networks as quarantine fields materialized around access points. The barriers shimmered with electromagnetic energy, their status reporting across multiple safety channels. Quarantine fields active, Dr. Nix announced through facility channels. Medical evacuation access maintained under containment protocols. Powell tracked the heavy cruisers through gaps in the solar interference. Their weapon systems remained powered but inactive as they established blocking positions along designated evacuation routes. Civilian traffic control, Commander Drake transmitted, requesting emergency medical priority clearance for departure Vector 73 Alpha. The facility's tertiary power systems hummed at minimal capacity as Timothy's cocoon approached the medical transport's primary bay. Warren monitored life support readings, while facility logs documented each phase of movement through official medical channels. Atmospheric contamination increasing in sectors 19 through 22, facility systems announced. Evacuation zone isolation protocols in effect. Commander Corvin's voice cut through security channels. Breach teams initiating decontamination sequence. Standard protocols estimate 15 minutes to completion. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted their remaining distance to the transport's medical bay as the solar storm reached peak intensity. Above them, Commander Drake's vessels maintained their protective formation while broadcasting civilian traffic signatures. The extraction operation balanced on the edge of multiple converging elements as Timothy's transfer continued through the atmospheric bridge. Each movement, each system interaction, each administrative delay contributed to their carefully crafted window of opportunity. Orbital traffic control confirming medical priority status, Commander Drake transmitted. Evacuation Route 73 Alpha designated for emergency access. Powell's enhanced vision registered the precise interaction of tactical elements, the failing power grid, the radiation barriers, the approaching military forces, and the narrowing extraction window. Through it all, their movement maintained its documented profile as a legitimate medical emergency. The transport's medical bay entrance beckoned ahead as facility systems counted down toward the solar storm's predicted peak. Around them, the carefully orchestrated layers of protection, physical, administrative, and tactical, maintained their synchronized dance between necessity and protocol. Through the crimson glow of emergency lighting, Powell watched the last segments of the atmospheric bridge stabilize as Timothy's transport cocoon crossed the threshold. Warren's hands moved across the medical controls, each adjustment registering through official channels as the transfer proceeded. A sharp crack echoed through the facility as the tertiary power grid gave out. Status displays flickered and died across multiple sections, leaving only the most basic life support indicators active. The remaining emergency lights cast stark shadows across the medical bay's specialized equipment. Total grid failure, Diana transmitted. All systems entering minimum protocols. A new voice cut through facility channels. Security Officer Reed implementing emergency radiation shelter procedures. Massive barriers descended from recessed housing in the corridor ceilings, their radiation-proof surfaces gleaming in the emergency lighting. All non-essential areas sealed for personnel protection. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked Commander Drake's vessels as they executed precise formation changes. The 5 ships moved into a protective screen around Dr. Voss's medical transport, their engines pulsing in careful sequence. Medical escort formation established, Commander Drake transmitted, requesting immediate evacuation clearance under radiation protection protocols. Kardashian traffic control responded through civilian channels, medical priority status confirmed. Evacuation Route 73 Alpha cleared for emergency transport. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted multiple alerts triggering across facility systems. Commander Corvin's breach teams showing dangerous radiation signatures, automated decontamination procedures activating. Through security channels, Commander Corvin's voice carried clear frustration. All teams, initiate full decontamination sequence. Estimated delay, 27 minutes. Donovan knelt beside his power converter, hands moving with practiced efficiency as he integrated emergency backup cells. The atmospheric bridge hummed with renewed energy as medical equipment power flowed into the system. Bridge stability at 97%, Donovan transmitted. Medical priority protocols active. Strike Leader Karn's voice cut through tactical channels. Radiation monitoring stations detecting critical levels in all approach vectors. Implementing immediate quarantine procedures. Powell's enhanced vision tracked 3 Kardashian-heavy cruisers moving into blocking positions. Their weapon systems remained ready but inactive as Fleet Captain Durrall's vessels established a containment pattern around designated civilian corridors. Warren activated a specialized set of medical protocols, his fingers dancing across control interfaces. Patient status critical. Implementing emergency transport procedures under Earth Kardashian Medical Convention Article 7. The approaching radiation wave appeared on Powell's tactical display as a massive surge of electromagnetic energy. Diana's analysis flashed across his vision. Wave impact in 3 minutes. Total system blackout predicted. Through the medical bay's observation ports, Powell watched Commander Drake's escort formation tighten around their position. The vessels broadcast legitimate civilian signatures while maintaining precise tactical spacing. Medical transport prepared for emergency departure, Dr. Voss transmitted. All critical systems secured. Facility sensors blared new warnings as the radiation wave approached. Warren completed Timothy's integration with the transport's medical systems, while Donovan monitored the atmospheric bridge's final moments of operation. Wave impact in 60 seconds, Diana transmitted, preparing for blackout conditions. Above them, Fleet Captain Durrall's vessels adjusted their blocking positions, forced to maintain gaps for civilian medical traffic under established protocols. Commander Drake's escort formation aligned with their designated departure vector as facility systems counted down toward impact. The extraction operation entered its final phase as multiple elements converged. Timothy secured in specialized medical stasis, Commander Drake's protective screen in position, and the approaching radiation wave about to disable all remaining facility systems. Through enhanced vision, Powell watched the wave's electromagnetic front approach through the solar storm. The facility's few remaining active systems prepared for total shutdown, while emergency medical protocols maintained their priority clearance through the Kardashian blockade. Wave impact in 20 seconds, Diana transmitted, as status indicators began failing across multiple channels. Medical evacuation procedures active. The operation balanced on the edge of execution as facility systems counted down toward darkness. Through shadows cast by emergency lighting, Warren completed Timothy's final medical readings. Patient secured. Life support integration complete. Donovan's hands moved across his power converter's interface with practiced precision. Initiating controlled overload sequence. Status indicators flashed from green to red as he manipulated power flow patterns. Electromagnetic signature aligned with solar wave parameters. The converter's hum rose to a high-pitched whine. Energy readouts spiked across multiple channels as Donovan's carefully calculated overload matched the approaching storm's electromagnetic profile. Kardashian vessels adjusting shield configurations, Diana transmitted. Automated radiation protection protocols engaging. Through enhanced vision, Powell observed Fleet Captain Durrall's cruisers shifting formation. Their shield geometries morphed in response to the combined electromagnetic signatures, creating predictable gaps in their coverage pattern. Medical Administrator Bren Tavik transmitting Priority 1 clearance codes, Dr. Voss announced. Receiving unrestricted departure authorization through military blockade zones. The transport's medical systems logged each life support reading as Warren stabilized Timothy's stasis field. Facility sensors documented every aspect of the patient's critical status through official channels. Commander Drake's voice cut through civilian frequencies. Implementing emergency radiation protection measures. All vessels maintain medical screen formation. 5 transport ships adjusted their positions with precise coordination. Their overlapping defensive pattern shielded Dr. Voss's vessel while broadcasting standard civilian signatures through Kardashian traffic control. Sensor buoy network active, Diana transmitted. Commercial navigation field generating maximum electromagnetic interference. Powell tracked multiple targeting alerts flickering across Fleet Captain Durrall's vessels. Their weapons systems struggled to maintain locks through the legitimate commercial distortion patterns. Strike Leader Karn's voice echoed through military channels. All combat units withdraw to safe distance. Critical radiation levels detected in approach vectors. Facility safety systems validated the evacuation order as automated sensors registered increasing radiation intensity. Official logs documented each unit's withdrawal under standard protection protocols. Elite Commander Corvin's teams detected in Maintenance Corridor 7, Diana transmitted. Attempting to override containment seals. Facility engineer Morrison's authorization codes cascaded through security networks. Emergency radiation containment protocols engaging. All access points sealed by automated safety systems. Heavy barriers slid into place throughout the maintenance sectors. Status displays confirmed each seal's activation through official facility channels. Health Ministry Inspector Dr. Kella Mari's implementing emergency quarantine procedures, Dr. Voss transmitted. All military vessels near evacuation route require full decontamination. Powell's tactical overlay highlighted multiple Kardashian warships forced to maintain distance from the medical transport corridor. Their command channels filled with automated safety alerts and procedural requirements. The facility's defense grid pulsed with increasing intensity as radiation levels approached critical thresholds. Automated systems transferred barrier control to safety protocols, preventing manual override attempts. Solar wave impact in 10 seconds, Diana transmitted. Electromagnetic interference reaching peak intensity. Commander Drake's escort formation aligned with their departure vector. The 5 ships maintained precise spacing while broadcasting civilian medical signatures through traffic control systems. Initiating emergency departure sequence, Dr. Voss announced as Warren monitored Timothy's life support readings. All systems secured under critical care protocols. The transport's engines hummed to life as facility power grids failed in sequence. Emergency lighting cast stark patterns across specialized medical equipment, while backup systems maintained vital patient monitoring functions. Wave impact in 3 seconds, Diana transmitted. Kardashian military vessels locked in defensive positions by safety protocols. Powell observed multiple layers of protection converging around their position: the electromagnetic interference, the civilian traffic protocols, the medical authorization codes, and the automated safety systems. Each element generated its own documented trail through official channels. The radiation wave's electromagnetic front washed over the facility as Dr. Voss's transport moved through its departure vector. Commander Drake's escort formation maintained their defensive screen while broadcasting standard civilian signatures. Medical evacuation priority confirmed. Kardashian traffic control transmitted. Departure Vector 73 Alpha cleared under emergency protocols. Status indicators flickered across Powell's enhanced vision as the transport accelerated through the designated corridor. Behind them, the facility's remaining systems shut down in sequence, while automated logs documented each failure under standard safety procedures. Through enhanced vision, Powell tracked the radiation wave's initial contact with the facility's outer shields. Cascading energy patterns rippled across the barrier surface before penetrating the defensive matrix. Primary shield generators overloaded in sequence, their status indicators winking out across tactical displays. Diana's transmission crackled through the electromagnetic interference. Military defense grid entering total shutdown. Automated safety systems engaging maximum radiation protocols. Kardashian warships vanished behind dense layers of radiation shielding, their targeting arrays blinded by the combined electromagnetic signatures. Fleet Captain Durwal's vessels maintained their positions, but lost active tracking capability as their sensor systems compensated for the intense radiation. Master Sergeant Donovan's hands flew across his power converter's interface one final time. Executing terminal sequence. The device's power curve spiked beyond safety parameters, its energy signature perfectly matching the solar storm's electromagnetic profile. Clear the area. The converter detonated with precise timing, its explosion merging seamlessly with the wave front's radiation pattern. Facility sensors logged the event as natural phenomena, unable to distinguish the calculated destruction from background interference. Medical transport launching, Dr. Voss transmitted through civilian channels. Emergency radiation protocols in effect. Commander Drake's 5 ships adjusted formation with practiced precision, their civilian transponders broadcasting legitimate evacuation codes. Through the transport's observation port, Powell watched Timothy's medical pod as Warren monitored life support readings. Patient vital signs stable, Warren reported, his fingers moving across specialized diagnostic interfaces. Stasis field maintaining optimal parameters. Strike Leader Karn's voice echoed through military frequencies. All vessels maintain safe distance, radiation levels exceeding critical thresholds. Fleet Captain Durwal's heavy cruisers attempted to track their departure vector, but encountered overwhelming sensor interference. The combination of solar radiation, explosion signatures, and commercial navigation buoys created an impenetrable electronic screen around the medical transport. Civilian medical convoy detected ahead, Diana transmitted, linking with emergency response formation. Dr. Voss's transport merged with the civilian vessels, its transponder signals matching their legitimate evacuation profiles. Official traffic control logs documented their course toward Outpost 7's neutral medical facility as the ships cleared Kardashian space. Through enhanced vision, Powell observed Commander Drake's escort vessels maintaining their protective screen. Earth Space Force ships waited at the border of neutral territory, their presence adding another layer of security to Timothy's extraction. Transfer documentation validated, Dr. Voss announced. Earth and Kardashian medical authorities confirm emergency evacuation status. Strike Leader Karn transmitted his final situation report. Full military withdrawal complete. Civilian medical vessels cleared under emergency protocols. His detailed radiation readings and safety procedures filled official channels, providing documented justification for the lack of military pursuit. The transport emerged from the electromagnetic distortion field, leaving behind a facility in darkness. Timothy's medical pod rested securely in the ship's specialized bay, surrounded by legitimate monitoring equipment and authorized transfer records. Diana's tactical overlay highlighted their successful transition into neutral space. Mission parameters achieved. Patient extraction complete. Through the transport's forward viewport, Powell watched the Kardashian border recede behind them. Commander Drake's civilian ships maintained their escort positions, while Earth Space Force vessels moved to establish additional defensive coverage around their formation. Warren's medical monitors displayed Timothy's steady vital signs as they approached Outpost 7. Patient recovery proceeding as expected, all exposure symptoms responding to treatment. The elaborate extraction operation concluded not with weapons fire or military confrontation, but with the quiet beeping of medical equipment and the gentle hum of civilian engines carrying their precious cargo to safety. Diana processed incoming data streams. Strike Leader Karn submitting equipment malfunction report. Kardashian investigation closing under standard radiation damage protocols. Through enhanced vision, Powell observed their escort formation, approaching Outpost 7's medical docking facilities. The classified details of Timothy's rescue disappeared beneath layers of legitimate documentation, preserved only in encrypted Earth military archives as their transport prepared for final approach.